Does anybody else want to alternate the chairs, or is that just my OCD? Like the colors of the chairs? Just 1 minute. No, it's okay. Thank you. All right, we good? Okay, good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, September 9th, 2020, and we are here in the Freeport High School. Although we've moved from our traditional library location to the cafeteria to provide a little bit more space for the board members as well as the public to join us if they wish. We have a full board here this evening, as well as our student rep. Liam is back with us. Thank you for doing that, Liam. And we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so I would take a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the July 15th, 2020 meeting, August 6th, 2020, August 12th, 2020, and August 26th, 2020. Did we take a summer? I don't think we did. Barring any errors or omissions. Maura and Maddie, thank you for that. All those in favor? None opposed, great. I do love the hand voting without the roll call, so that's good. Happy to have that back and I was going to say get to see everybody's smiling faces, but I don't know who's smiling behind their mask. Okay, adjustments to the agenda.
Yes, we have two. So they'll both be under new business. One is the update on the extracurricular, and the other one is consideration of a revision to the open campus policy.
Okay. Do you have a spot where you want to put those? Just so I make sure I don't fly by.
Yes, I'd like to put the open campus request after the school calendar and the extracurricular after the fall sports.
Okay. Great. Just so we don't forget to get those done. Okay, so we will move right on to good news and recognition. And Liam, I believe, has a report out on the opening of school.
Yeah, so I don't have too much, of course. It's the first day for me, and I think the second for the general district. But yeah, most sports began practicing yesterday. Soccer, field hockey, and football are over at the track. Football is at the Pownell Road field, cross country and JV and first team are at the baseball field for soccer, I believe. Cheering is at the softball field, and JV field hockey is going to be at the softball field too, if I recall correctly. And golf will be at the Freeport Country Club. So I talked to a few people, and it seems like everyone's pretty excited for the season, even with the restrictions set in place. Picture Day is coming up on September 15th and 16th for us. Our student pantry is empty at the high school right now, so if, donations are appreciated right now, and so it can be restocked. There won't be a musical this year. However, FHS will be producing a fall play outside called Antigone. Antigone? Oh, sorry, completely butchered that. And yeah, I thought I would quickly talk about my experience first day back, make it a little longer and hopefully interesting. So I thought it was kind of interesting that everyone was really wearing masks without complaining, and I think everyone felt pretty comfortable with the temperature too. The classrooms, I would say, felt pretty normal. Of course, you've got the cafeteria lunch that was a little different with 2 people, and I heard that some schools even had 1 person, but it's only 30 minutes, so it went by pretty quickly. Yeah, it was kind of neat that we have to walk around the school to get to the new part of the building from the old one, is we've got a one-way hallway, and it was kind of nice to kind of get outside for, even if it was only 2 or 3 minutes between classes, get some fresh air. And I really felt like all the teachers were really well prepared for getting the student body back in. So that's pretty much all I have.
Great, thank you. Okay, public comment. So we have two ways to do public comment. I'm looking at you, Becky. Right? Yeah. So do we have folks that are online? Can you tell, Keith, if there's folks that are in the Zoom? Okay, so we may have the ability for folks, if they're calling into the Zoom, to have public comment similar to how we've done with our virtual meetings, and then we also have a mic here in the cafeteria for folks that are here in person. So while we figure out if there's folks on the Zoom, we do have some public here today, and so if anybody wanted to get up and speak, we just ask that you come up, give your name and where you're from, and comments are 3 minutes.
Hi there. Should I take my mask off? Is that okay? Or do I keep it on while I'm speaking in the... Can you guys hear me okay in the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay, great. My name's Kate Smith. I'm a parent in Freeport. I have 2 students at the high school. And I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the Performing Arts Boosters. I have a letter here prepared, and then I have some additional thoughts I'd like to add. So the letter, as written by the board, says, "Dear members of the RSU 5 School Board, we address this letter to you today in regard to the status of the performing arts in the RSU 5 School District. As parents and members of the Performing Arts Boosters, we have a vested interest in the future of art, theater, music, and other creative arts in RSU 5 for our own children and all other performing arts students as well. Chorus, band, and theater are vital outlets for our performing arts students. Singing, playing instruments, performing on a stage, stage design, etc., have a significant impact on our students' sense of well-being. It is very important to all of us that our students in RSU 5 continue to have creative outlets to foster their sense of worth, emotional and social connectedness, and overall mental health. Given research findings indicating that the arts have a positive impact on youth in terms of empowerment, enhanced social and communication skills, increased self-confidence, increased empathy, and conflict resolution skills, reduced alcohol and drug use, and improved emotional regulation, it seems that a pandemic is the most critical time to preserve and even enhance opportunities for the arts. There will need to be very careful consideration regarding how the arts are implemented into schools, as complying with safety guidelines is of utmost importance. But artists and performers are creative and resourceful, and if any group can show resilience and initiative in these circumstances, it is the performing arts teachers and students. Please consider keeping the arts a strong part of the RSU 5 this year. Thanks for your consideration, members of the Performing Arts Boosters Board. In addition, I just wanted to say I'm not only a parent, I'm a nurse practitioner, I work in primary care, and I can speak to the health benefits, but in my prior life I was also a high school history teacher. As a slight aside, when we talk about the elements of a civilization, the 6 most crucial, number 1 of those is the arts. But obviously my role as a history teacher in the high school, I saw how the arts were an important outlet for so many various students. It brings together a bunch of students who maybe wouldn't have met those kids otherwise. Kids who are from different grades, different backgrounds, definitely different classes, and I think that they work together in a cooperative environment to provide, to make one performance that kind of brings them together as a team and a sense of community. For many students, this is the driving force bringing them back to school, is the performing arts, either if it's an instrument or singing or production. And I know personally a lot of the kids who are thrilled about Antigone, and that there was, you know, these creative solutions to the problem were found so that they could have at least a production for the fall. So as a parent, again, I chose Freeport partially because of its strong performing arts background. I knew how important it was here. So I just encourage you to keep coming up with these creative solutions and keep the arts at the forefront for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Keith, can you see if there's any hands up on the... Say that again? No hands. Okay. Okay. All right. So as folks recall, we do have another public comment at the end, towards the end of our agenda. So people have another opportunity there. But we will continue on with our agenda with the report from the superintendent.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. And we do hope to continue with the Zoom public comments, but we're just, because we've had such good participation in the past, so that's why we're going to try that for a few meetings and see how it goes. So good evening, everyone. The first day of school went very well, as did the second day. It was a beautiful day, and I had an opportunity to visit all of our schools. Masks were being worn, lots of hand sanitizing being done, and clever ways were being used to socially distance, including Miss Gulko's pool noodle. And transportation was a non-issue because so many of the parents have heard our request to partner and to transport their kids, so we did not need to call any of our backup buses. In fact, most of our buses had between 2 and 15 students, and so if these numbers really hold, I feel like if we get to green, we're going to be all set, because that was one of our big worries. But we'll see, you know, it's only day 2, we'll see how this continues. Our rough enrollment numbers in Power School as of today show that we have about 1,970 students. When I did an enrollment projection in January, when I presented the budget, I projected would be at 2,034. Last year, our October 1st enrollment was 2,012. So you can see that we've lost some students. We have about 60 fewer students than I really anticipated. These are just a super rough estimate, not the certified number that we'll have on October the 1st, so I will continue to update you. Of these 1,970 students, 166 have selected the remote option, which is a little bit over 8% of our population, which correlates to the survey that we did back in end of May, beginning of June. Nutrition is going very well. Students take home their meals for their remote days for the week when they leave on their first in-person learning day. All of the remote meals are similar to the meals that they can get in school. It's a combination of fresh, frozen, or shelf-stable items. Currently, there are almost 200 students that are accessing these meals. All meals are free for all students until December 31st due to the extension of the USDA summer meals waiver. This does include non-students under the age of 18, so even if they're like not in our school systems right now, and so Erin is working with her staff to figure out how to make this happen to anyone wanting to access them. Hiring has been a bigger issue than it has been in years past. I think this is similar to what many school districts are going through right now. We're usually almost fully staffed by now, and just to give you an idea, we still are in need of 2 kitchen assistants, 3 lunch monitors, 4 ed techs, a STEM teacher, a PLC coach, a custodian bus driver, another custodian position, a math coach, and an ELL teacher. And so I just I don't really usually talk about staffing at this time of the year because it's usually just a non-issue, but part of that is because, we just figured out all of the remote learning options, so we pulled some of our teachers to do the remote option, which means that we've, created a vacancy there. And then some of it is just, I think, due to the labor shortage in the state. We did have 11 staff members who wanted to work remotely and were denied. Of those 11, one of them resigned. The others either chose to come back to work or chose to take a 1-year leave of absence. And then I'm happy to report that we have a signed contract with the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, and that we've sent them policies for their review. We've also consulted with them about the formation of the committee, which we will have ready for the next board meeting for your consideration. And that concludes my report for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Molly?
Becky, would you mind giving an update, quick update on where we're at with the solar project?
So I don't have a big update there. But I'm happy to reach out to the attorney that's assisting us and see where we're at with that, and either provide that in my weekly update to all of you or even at the next board meeting.
Okay. We do not have any administrator reports, board comments, policy review, unfinished business. So we are on to the board's work plan for the 2020-2021 school year.
Okay. Pretty much we've followed last year's plan. And, we do have some additions, the one I just spoke about, looking at the charge for the Equity Committee. Also on January 13th, we have added a workshop to review the audit findings from the equity audit. And then we've added to the same evening that I'm going to do the budget presentation. It's hard to even say that right now. But we've added the enrollment study to that. And other than that, it really has kind of followed along the same lines as, previous years.
So Becky, I know that we don't have a timing yet, so it's hard to decide when to include that, but at some point, I expect that this year we'll also review the findings of the energy audit and the recommendations they have and decide what to implement and what not to implement.
I did think about that, but I wonder if that's going to come through my superintendent's report. So I know recently I just sent you, I think, the updates on all of their work around the ventilation system. And so some of their recommendations were, fix this immediately, and so we're doing those kind of things. So it'll be, if they do this final report, yes, we'll put that on there when they give it to us, but I think that there may be some things that are done incrementally, and I'll just report that out as they come up for your consideration.
Okay, perfect. And then the other question I had is, for the schools, we have updates, and then we have goal review, but for the other departments, we just have update and no goals. Would it be possible to add goals, say, to technology, nutrition, athletics?
Absolutely.
Instructional support? Anyone who gives an update, I personally would like to hear about their goals for the year as well.
Yes, that's just an oversight of how it's written.
Okay, thank you.
I have 4 little questions. We had asked for an update on the synchronous learning pilot at some point. Is that something that we could do in the short term?
Yes. I'm trying to think how. We could have it done a couple of ways, I think, Maddie. We could look at having the schools report out on that as they do their report.
That
Or
would be-
we could do a separate one. And
When we're done school goal review by November? December? I mean, I think it would be great to have it be included in that. I see no problem.
with
that.
each principal.
Yeah.
And because I do think that it's very different at the elementary than the high
course.
school. And so I think that that could be, I think it might be better to chunk it like that for
Yeah.
your,
Makes sense.
okay.
Although
Um,
the only pilots are at the middle school and the high school, right? So-
Yes, but I think that, oh, okay. That is where the pilots are because we had a very different model that we're trying for the elementary, but I think it still is worth asking the question as it comes up, are you trying any synchronous learning in other ways? And hearing out from the schools about what they have to say about that. And also, if we go into red, we're going to have some type of synchronous learning, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the other thing that would be nice about having each school report out, because it just might evolve over the fall.
Yeah, I would be interested in that, because I would hope that even if we go green, we might consider this for snow days in the future, so even if this extends into January, I'm happy to hear about that.
Yeah, although I wanted to add that since the high school doesn't report until December 9th, I would prefer to have an update sooner than that. Only because if, like you say, Becky, we have to switch to red, then at that point, before we go to red, I think it would be important for us to learn about what has been going on and see whether the red plan can incorporate more synchronous learning.
Yeah, maybe we can even squeeze in a little bit tonight, but we could do.
Okay. Thank you.
That wasn't as quick as I thought. So the calendar review for next year is not until February, but didn't we do it earlier last year because we wanted to get a jump on our cohort?
Well, you're going to do it tonight.
Oh, we are?
Yeah, you're going to do.
Right.
You're going to do the jump tonight.
Right,
But
got
I
it.
think the official recommendation, I think that's what you're looking at on that
I was
day.
confused because it says
That's
first
okay.
read. Okay, good, that's good, thank you. And then there's a migration report in April. And I had asked at one point last year for an understanding from, I don't know, records, it would be somebody, about what we might expect in terms of losses due to vaccination requirements for next school year by the state. Will that be included in that migration report, or could it?
Thanks for reminding me, because it wouldn't have been otherwise.
Good, good. It's good that we do this. And then my last question, and I'll bring this up later, but at our meeting next week, I don't know if this needs I hope it doesn't need a lot of time, but per our email discussion today, I would like to review the arts curriculum. So just want to make sure that that's added. Thanks.
Yes, I think we should probably discuss that as a follow-up to her presentation to see if that's needed or wanted.
Any other questions for Becky before we move on? Okay, thank you. So, all right, consideration and approval of the RSU 5 district goals for 2020-2021.
Okay, I would, I think, direct you to take out item 12B that's kind of on the tan paper. And then the 12B, 3 little eyes. I think that's easiest way for you to kind of look at this. So Cynthia and I spent a lot of time kind of looking at the timeline, which has now, for the strategic plan, been pushed out to May of 2026. You can see on the 12B III, we've just crossed through the things that we have pushed out. It does not mean that we've eliminated them, but they're just not on the plan for this year in order to make room for the items that are highlighted in blue, which are primarily around either the energy audit work or the equity work. I still kind of consider this a pretty ambitious plan, but I think that Cynthia and I felt like it's very doable. There were things under the social emotional learning that we eliminated or pushed to later. Some of it's due to just even the pandemic. So when you look at an item that was slated to be done this year around exploring student-centered practices in Maine and beyond, that really is talking about going out and visiting other schools and learning from them. And although we could do some of that virtually, I think as you saw on your board tour of our facilities, it's just so much more meaningful when you can see it in person, what they're doing, talk to them. So that's why some of those things got pushed out when we were trying to prioritize, okay, what do we postpone in order to do the equity work that we need to do. And so I give those goals to you, the one-year goals there for your consideration and adoption tonight, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions. But it's all work that has been in the plan, the 5-year plan, and all this is tonight is looking at, okay, what are we trying to commit to accomplish this year?
And the items in yellow are the items, the carryovers from last year's, right?
Yes.
Molly?
So thank you so much, Becky. This is great. I have to tell you, it made it so easy to read that you rewrote this, slashed out the things that you're postponing. So I really appreciate it. And obviously, there's a lot of work going into this. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask if it would be possible for certain of the strategics that include topics that the students may have good knowledge about, that we include their voices. So for example, when you have in the 10 sheet person responsible, oftentimes I was hoping that I would see student or community member there, and I didn't. And given that 2 of our goals are to give students more voice and give community members more voice, I think it would be appropriate to begin that work now, even though we're not really doing those objectives now, but we can start including them already when we work through these other things. So for example, for the objective 1.1, strengthening and align social and emotional development systems, when we had our students here at the board last year and we discussed this, their input was invaluable. So I think it would be worth the time, even though it makes the process more cumbersome to include student voices. The same to be said for the diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. Having a student rep there, I think would be hugely helpful. Then, for example, for the strategic 3.1, on how to proactively distribute information about RSU schools and seek feedback from stakeholders, community member there, I think would be very appropriate. 3.2, engage all RSU 5 learners in community-based learning, both in the classroom and in the community. A student there, if could be included, that would be great. And those are the ones that stood out most, except for one more, which is 4.5, strengthen community engagement, having a community member participate as the person responsible would be, I think, appropriate. And the last one, which is objective 4.6, 4.4 from this document was referring to appliances, major appliances and other facilities that will be reviewed by the energy audit. This is a strategic objective that relates to that audit. So perhaps if it were possible to include some of that work in this year's work as they conduct the audit, if they recommend switching over to energy efficient appliances or things that come under the set of recommendations, that we could consider adding them to this objective for this year, because it makes more sense to do it as it's recommended. And the last thing for that objective 2 is to include the sustainability committee under person responsible to review the recommendations and then make a set of recommendations to the board on what are the most important things to address this year.
So I think, so what did you say about 4.6? Are you talking about the nutrition piece?
4.6.
I'm not sure.
No,
I'm not sure that I followed you there, Val.
4.6 and the TAN,
Yes.
it reads, ensure that all facilities are operating efficiently and effectively. And then it talks about under action strategies about the energy audit
Yes.
and develop and present recommendations.
Yep.
So within those recommendations, one thing that was eliminated from this sheet was basically review under 4.4. It said, okay.
Oh, I think I can explain that. The yellow, are you referencing the yellow on this sheet?
No, I'm referencing something that it says implement recommended improvements, and in parentheses, transportation was added, but the original sheet that we looked at last meeting, the recommended improvements included, in red, include inventory and evaluate major equipment and facilities in schools, prioritizing repairs and replacements. So that
That's 4.3.
Yeah,
Is that 4.3?
the numbers we discovered last
Right.
time were a little mixed up, but in basically the summary that we looked at last time, it was labeled 4.4D. But basically, it talked about inventorying major equipment. And what I'm saying is, if we could include major equipment as part of the energy audit, rather than push it to next year, it would make sense to do it now if we're getting recommendations from professionals about major equipment right now or this year, in this coming year.
So I'm thinking the major equipment was more in the nutrition program, but you're thinking not.
It could be.
Yeah,
It could be, because
so
a lot of
I
it is
think-
kitchen
nutrition.
equipment. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so I think that that's something that probably the equity audit's not going to be looking at. It's something that doesn't currently exist in the nutrition program that Aaron Dow feels really strongly about, that we need, and we need to develop a plan, and I think that will be still, is that on our plan? I think it is, right? That's 4.3D.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
she's,
that's because 4.3D isn't supposed to be done until like 2021 in like the fall.
Right.
So
And I'm
we're not
saying-
pushing it out, that's still the original timeline, and I don't think the energy audit's going to do anything with like her inventory.
Okay. So they're not going to come and look at the refrigeration system and the ovens and things like that to see if they're energy efficient or not? I thought that would be part of the energy audit.
Well, I agree with you. If it is, then we should do it in
Okay.
the audit. So I'll check on that because I'm really not sure now that you're kind of rephrasing it in that
Okay.
light. But it was something that Erin had targeted in her 5-year plan that she felt like needed to be done.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think what we had said at the retreat was for things that were going to be done in September 2021, we probably wanted them on this year's work plan or this year's list because it's going to be done before we do this review again, right? September is like 1 year from now, right, is what we're
Yes.
looking at?
Yes, and
So-
or I could like look and see, can we do it this year or, should we push it till November or something?
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
Other clarifications? So I would take a motion for consideration and approval of the RSU 5 district goals for 2020, 2021. Vali, second. Maddie, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Okay. Unfinished business C, consideration of action to add, delete, and consolidate committees and make annual appointments. Board member names indicate the members that were part of those committees last year. Just a reminder, you're welcome to vacate a spot, swap, trade, pick up others. We certainly have some vacancies, so we want to make sure that that we get the vacant seats filled on all of our Tier 1 and Tier 2. So the tiers are on that item 12C in your packet that's color-coded there. Tier 1 are primarily the ones that are legally required and the number of people. And then Tier 2 are ones that, we tend to prioritize quite highly and want to make sure that we have adequate coverage on. And then Tier 3 are committees that we are not legally required to have, but we feel we have historically maintained. And then Tier 4 tend to be ones that have been relatively not overly active, so not big heavy lifts, but like cable board we have to keep, but doesn't require a lot of time on the board members' part. So we did this last year just sort of as a visual to see, make sure that we're having folks spread across the variety of committees. And so we've got we have some open spots. So I don't know if we want to start with the open spots and then folks can offer up trades. Yes, Jen.
I just want to put it out there that last year I did offer, because you took support negotiations, that I would do teacher negotiations, because last year was an off year for stipend. An on year for stipend and an off year for teachers. So I'd be willing to do that. I don't know if, Michelle, you want to keep it or if there's someone else that's interested, but I will do that if there's no one else interested.
That's what I was just going to say. This one says 2 to 3. Historically, for professional negotiations, we've had 3 people. So it just happens that the 3 last time were me, Kate, and Lindsay, who have both left. So I would say we want to make sure that we have 3 folks on the professional negotiations. So I think you got yourself a spot, Jen.
Okay, thank you.
Dwight, are you waving at me? Yes.
I would also volunteer for that if maybe.
Perfect. Yes, Beth.
I just have a question. Are we there wasn't a numbered thing for the equity committee. Are we doing that tonight, or are we waiting till next week when?
Yeah, we'll
everything's-
do that once we have the charge.
Okay, all right.
And then we'll then
Okay,
we'll vote
that's
on
fine.
those.
I just
Yep.
had a quick-
So we put it on here just so people had it sort of in their mind. I mean, if we want to talk about, you know, if somebody is interested in that, and you know that might be a bigger lift this year than well, obviously than in the past, because we didn't have it previously. So you wouldn't want to take that and a bunch of other big committees in this year. So we just wanted to throw it on there so people were thinking about it. So yeah, it's not one we'll vote on yet. So support shouldn't necessarily require anything this year. We just settled that contract in the spring of 2020. You know, we keep folks on the committee just in case there's a question that gets raised, but that one should be pretty easy. Policy, I think that's an important one to get 3 people for. So we do have a vacancy on policy. Lindsay?
I would do policy, and I'd even, if you need a third name on support, I would go there and I would go, what? Hello? From the other side. I would volunteer for policy and support if you need a name there. And are we just going to go one by one? If we don't need as many people on strategic communications, I could come off that, but I can stay. Anyway, yes.
Okay. Do we usually have 3 for support? I'll look at Candy because she's always on that one. You don't remember? Well, I know we just did it, but was there 3 of us? I thought it was just Candy and I.
Before, I think it was just me and Candy, so I think it's just 2 board members and then you, Becky. Because I'm mixing up stipend. You're on stipend with us, but we're on support, right? Yeah, so I think it was just 2 board members.
Okay. So we won't worry about filling a 3rd support spot, and it should be a moot point anyway this year. Is anyone else interested in policy? Okay. Finance, this is another one that we have a vacancy that we need to fill. We have that 1 per town, and so with Kate's departure from the board, Beth and Dwight can arm wrestle, whatever you want to do.
We've already discussed it, that I would be happy to be on that committee.
Perfect. Thank you, Beth. Okay, so strategic communications, that one is one that we had sort of earmarked for 2 or 3. I think 3 probably makes good sense. We currently have 4. Lindsay, if you are okay coming off that one, I think, because I think policy, I mean, that's a busy one. So taking off the strategic communications probably isn't bad for your scheduling. And I just want to make sure that we fill vacancies, and then anybody who wants to change existing ones. I think that's it for vacancies.
So I'm not on dropout committee anymore.
Okay.
That didn't work with my work schedule, so I'm on there, but I'm not on there.
Okay.
So that's,
Yes.
I guess there only needs to be 1. Is there like feedback or something I'm hearing? I don't know. So Beth, if you're planning on staying on, I think there only needs to be 1. Okay. I did really love that committee. It just totally did not work with my work schedule.
Okay. So I think we have filled the spots we need to fill. We've dropped strategic communications to 3 and dropout committee. Jen's a dropout from the dropout committee, down to 1. And so now if there are folks that wanted to adjust their committees or trade, anybody feel like they have a lot on their plate? Yeah, Maura.
Yeah, so I did hear from MSBA, and they did nominate me, or will, in October to be the to be the Region 7 representative. So they'll vote, that won't get voted on until October, but hopefully I will be on the MSBA board. So I would be interested in giving up my spot on the Sustainability Committee and or the Region 10 board.
Okay, so sustainability and Region 10.
Or both.
And or. Yes, Dwight.
I would think I'd like to volunteer for Region 10 then.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
It's
All
really
right,
great. It's
so-
a great board.
Yes. Yes, Susanna.
With that one taken, I'd volunteer for the sustainability.
Oh, it's not on here because it's an advisory committee. So it doesn't necessarily change. So those sustainability, we can just change at will. Is that true? Sure, okay. So we will make sure you get added to that distribution list. Wellness is the other one. That's flips over. That's the last one on the page, the next page. So if anyone wants to. Karen Van Nostrom has graciously agreed to continue on the Region 10 board if we need her to. But if we had a board member who felt strongly that they wanted to hop in there, I'm sure she would step aside. I don't see anyone jumping at it, and I'm sure Karen is fantastic at it. So we will let her continue on in that role. Any other changes? Anyone else interested in the negotiation? I know we have Jen and Dwight. I am currently that third person, but if someone was just itching to give teacher negotiations a try, I would give them a shot at it.
I just want to say, to be very fair, that I was supposed to take your spot. That was a trade. So I mean, I just want to point out too, Michelle, because I know you're not going to because you're the chair, but you know, you have a lot on your plate as well. So I think it's good for us to recognize that you have 4 in the red.
Well, 1 support, and that one doesn't count because there's nothing this year. So only 3. Yes, Mara.
I can take that one if you want me to.
I mean, it's a lot. So I mean, if you're taking stuff off your plate, just be aware that professional negotiations is a lot in the year of a contract.
Okay. I mean, looking at the balance of what it feels like between you and me, if you feel like that's fair, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I don't mind doing it, but I know that you're taking on other stuff, and I don't want to pull off a big one and throw another one big up on your plate. So if you want to do it, I'm happy to give it to you, but don't take it because you feel like I need you to, or I'd like you to. What's that? It is very interesting. You learn a ton going through the contract. You really do. Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to run down what we've changed just through, so we're going to vote on these as a slate, not individually. So for professional negotiations, Richeson, Galetta, and Ely. Support negotiations, DeSipkis and Richeson. Policy, yes. What? Who did I switch?
Didn't Lindsay go on support?
We didn't add her because we don't need 3. We usually only have 2 on there anyway. I'm not sure why I think the vacant spot just ended up under support instead of professional by accident. Because usually we have 3 for professional and only 2 for support. So next time support's up though, Lindsay, we're coming looking for you.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want, I'm happy to swap you and I in that one so then you're officially on that committee in case something comes up. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. There it is. Okay. So support negotiations, DeSipkis and Fertney. Policy, DeSipkis, Vertenton, and Fertney. Finance, Clough, Richardson, and Munson. Strategic Communications, DeSipkis, Steverlink, and Hancock. RSU 5 Community Program Advisory Committee, Clough. Region 10 Technical High School Board, Ely and Van Nostrand. Dropout Prevention, Munson. Stipend Review, Galetta and Vertenton. Student-Centered Learning Committee, Vertenton and Munson. Freeport Cable TV Board, Hancock. Freeport Performing Arts Center Advisory Committee, Vertenton. Safety Committee, Clough and Pillsbury. And Wellness Committee, Steverlink. Do I have a motion to approve the slate as presented? Susanna, thank you. Second, Beth. Any other questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace until next year. Okay, all those in favor? None opposed. Great. Thank you guys very much. I know we pushed that off a few times, but I think it was important to have everybody here and talk that through. So great. All right, new business. 2020 fiscal year 22 budget timeline. It's the day 2 of school. We're already doing the budget timeline.
Okay, this pretty much follows the timeline from last year, and I did meet today with the new Director of Finance, and Rick said it looked good to him, so we have really no substantial changes to make, so I'm happy to hear your input on this.
Looks good.
Yeah, we're not voting on this, right? So it's just any question. So I did notice there's a meeting on St. Patrick's Day. I don't love that, but fair enough.
The only thing I would say is that if we're still under COVID restrictions, obviously we need to have the annual budget meeting in the largest space that we can possibly find.
Yep.
And that may be even outdoors, but
Right.
at the very least, the gym here at the high school.
Yes. Adaptability. That's what our mantra for the year, right? Any other questions? So we're going to keep the Q&As on there before our budget meetings, so folks can ask any questions they have before the annual budget meeting and the referendum. All right. So next is a discussion of the 2021-2022 school calendar.
Do they have the, is this on? Can you hear me? Is it on? It's on. Okay. Just speak louder. Okay. Did you all receive a copy of this tonight? Okay. Becky has it. This is I just printed this off of a Google Calendar so that you could just visually see where the dates are for the 21-22 school year. And those of you who did this last year, the reason we brought it up at the beginning of this year is just to have a generalized conversation. We're not picking dates or, making anything definite, but just to have a generalized conversation about how we want our calendar to look, so that when I go to the meetings with Brunswick and 75, when we all come, and Region 10, when we all come to the table, we have a sense of, yes, we all want to start before Labor Day, for example. So I'll just wait till Candy gets hers. And I have 4 points I'd like to bring up to go through, and then if there are others afterward that you think of, please share those. So if you look in August, I'd like to start there. It's the similar situation this year as it was last year, where Labor Day is late. So it's on the 6th next fall. It would be on the 6th. And so what I was wondering if you would consider is we go back to August, we were going to start on the 31st, which would be this following year would be the 30th. And then the 2 days, the week before, the 25th and 26th, are typically our first 2 PLD days that we have with staff. And so that's one consideration for you to ponder tonight. And then the other piece that kind of goes along with that, if we did August 30th, then if you look at September, we had planned to have the 3rd as a day off to make the Labor Day weekend a 4-day weekend, where we were starting early. So I'll just stop with that and ask for any of your feedback.
Sorry, just one clarification question. You were saying for the professional development days in August to be the 25th and 26th?
Yes.
Why would it not be the 26th and 27th, the Thursday and Friday, so that?
We've always done it on a Wednesday,
Okay.
Thursday. I think it's just to get, Friday feels like a weekend to people, and so we are doing the 2 days. So we've always, since Becky and I have been here, it's been on the Wednesday
Okay.
and the Thursday.
Thank you.
Yeah, just historical.
So when would the last day be?
Oh, I haven't done any of that. That
okay,
kind of
sorry.
work comes a little bit later. It's just to get some general. It would be in June.
Oh.
Sorry, Beth. That is kind of funny. Yeah, I didn't count out because we don't know. Like Christmas is going to be another discussion because that's going to be. But we'll get to that in a minute because that's going to be a decision between this day or this day, I'm thinking. So, but we'll get to that one after. I mean, the other alternative is to start after Labor Day on the 7th, like we're doing this year, but then it really does push that back further into June.
So I have trouble giving an opinion whether starting on the 30th or the 7th is better without knowing when do we end. I mean, starting the 30th, would that mean that we end June 1st? That's too early.
No.
I would rather not. But
No.
if it means we're ending June 15th or 20th, then that makes sense to start early.
I think this year, where we were supposed to start on the 31st, I think we were getting done on the 16th of June without snow days. Does that sound right?
Can you look at the calendar? Yes, it's your calendar.
So it was mid-June, starting in August.
Right.
The 15th with no snow days.
It's usually 15, 16, 17,
So, and then this year for the holiday, we've got like a solid week and a half off, right? So if there we go, perfect, thank you. So for the holiday this year, there are 7 school days off. And that gets us out on the 15th, starting on the 30th. So if we looked at something similar, and did, 7 days or so around the holidays, that would get us out around the same time, the mid-June.
So it is the 15th this year?
Yep.
I just confirmed it. Oh, did you have?
Becky pulled it out of her bag of tricks over
Okay.
here.
She even told us how many days we'll have in December.
Yeah. 7 days off in December. Yes, Maddie.
Or 8?
So I'm feeling bullishly optimistic that we are going to figure something out about snow days. And with that in mind, I'm a fan of starting after Labor Day and finishing mid-June, because I think we could potentially have some interesting options for snow days, so kids aren't not learning days.
Yeah, because historically, we've typically added at least 5 days to the year, so we kind of have to plan that in.
But didn't you say even starting this year, if we had started in August, the projected date was still to get out the 15th with no snow days?
That's for this year, but so, I mean, if
if you could configure it.
I'm thinking we've got a year to figure it out. And I don't think we can figure out snow days this year. We've got plenty on our plate. But by next year, with everything we're going to learn this year, we might.
Yes, Susanna.
Does the decision about the day of starting school need to be made immediately? And in the ask that if we want to look into options for snow days, can we see how the pilot on synchronous learning goes this year?
So we start meeting in December.
Okay.
And they're all gonna come to the table with, we're starting after Labor Day or we're starting before. And you can only have 5 days different among you.
So,
Okay.
so let me just provide a little context for folks, if this is your first time going through this calendar exercise. Because we share Region 10, we're required to only have 5 days difference in our schedule between the 3 sending towns. So that really limits our ability to vary too far from Brunswick and 75. So, and historically, they come with, here's our calendar, and we're like, oh, I guess we have to take that then, because, you know, every day we're off is really 2 days, right? Because we're on one day and they're off a different day, so that's 2 days. So there's not a lot of wiggle room in there. So we had pushed back these discussions to the early part of the year so that we could arm Cynthia with what we wanted her to accomplish when she walked into that meeting, knowing that she was very capable of getting it done for us. So, and she's done a great job. So this is usually the part of the show where Kate goes, "Can we get rid of one of the vacations?
Can we have no February break? No, that's my mantle now. I'm carrying it forward." But, you know, if we figure out the snow day thing, you know, I might be okay with the February break. I don't know if Kate would make that same concession, but I would.
I really worry about, I agree with you 100%, Maddie. I really want to figure out the snow day thing, and I think we can. I just don't know if we can do it in time to 100% go with the after Labor Day start if you have to kind of start doing that in December. Like, it puts a strain on us this year to figure out the snow day thing. I think that, I mean, I hate to look at like another year ahead, but I think that that would be something that we would really push for to work on this year and to implement the following year with like snow days, because I think everybody is really interested in that. But it would scare me to start after Labor Day next year if that isn't figured out, and then we have a lot of snow days and we end up in July like we almost did last year.
So I personally would rather start after Labor Day, even if we do take that risk of not figuring out the snow days and ending up with 5 snow days, because honestly, the weather in June isn't very good generally. So I would rather just basically start late and end at the end of June if need be. But if we're saying that it would be the 15th without snow days, we wouldn't go past the 21st. So I'd rather end up June 21st and start after Labor Day than...
That was starting in August.
That's starting in August.
Oh, that's starting in August. So that would put us, what, the 28th of June if we didn't figure the thing. With
Looking at the
days
29th,
every...
which I think we're going to get a lot of pushback from camps that start and jobs and...
Yeah, that's late.
Yeah, it is pretty late. I mean, it's crazy that it's a 2-week swing, but, you know, if we push a week for the holiday and then don't figure out the snow day thing and have, I mean, 5 days is not a lot. I mean, that's sort of the average. Some days, some years it's more than that. But we do have 15 months to figure it out, right? I mean, we're not going to have snow days until likely December of next year, right? I mean, we've got time to come up with a plan, but we just need to make the decision before the plan is potentially done.
Don't forget the October windstorm of 2018.
Oh, they're coming to school that day. Susanna?
I think I'm in favor of starting prior to Labor Day. But that aside, I do think that we'd have some indication on the success of synchronous learning this year. And especially if we can get reports prior to December about that, if we can get updates as to how it's going, we can at least have some confidence in start envisioning how we might be able to approach snow days if that's the direction we want to go. But in absence of that, I think the 28th, 29th of June is too late with camps and jobs, and, you know, especially kids that are going off to, you know, college or elsewhere that is going to start in mid-August. You know, they've got 6 weeks off, and that's not time for jobs and various things.
So is our direction for Cynthia before Labor Day, with the hopes that we're okay? Straw poll. If you're in favor of a pre-Labor Day start, put your hand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So pre-Labor Day 9, post-Labor Day start. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So I think pre-Labor Day. But, you know, I'd be interested to hear what their discussion around those types of things are, you know, if they're thinking the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know. I mean, I would expect that this conversation is happening at school boards across the state. So I'd be curious to hear from them if they're exploring the idea of a different approach to snow days in the future, and what impacts to the calendar that they're considering. Just for feedback for us for future years.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that Brunswick and 75 come back and say, you know what, we're not going to be doing snow days anymore. We're you know, and we're committed to making that work. And then I guess we're forced to drop in line. But
and I would like to add that as far as jobs go, usually August, there are a lot more openings because all the college students have left already. So all the businesses are scrambling to get high school students to cover through the end of August. So, I mean, the job thing, I think if you were a teenager and had a job, you would be competing with the college students in June because they're all back. But in August, the field is wide open and everyone's really needing your help. So the job thing doesn't convince me, but the camps do. I still want after Labor Day.
I think the idea was around our seniors that have a very small window to earn some money before they go off to college. And by pushing them out, they're losing another week or two of pay. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's on either side, there's opportunity for somebody. So yes, Beth.
I'd like to clarify my straw poll vote that I am technically in favor of starting after Labor Day, but not if it puts us at the last week of June. So that's why I'm
Yes.
voting for prior.
Yeah, and I think historically, when Labor Day is earlier in the month, you know, we have been a district that has always started after Labor Day, and I don't see a reason why we would change that, except when Labor Day is so late, and it really pushes us back to the end of the month. So I think, you know, this probably after this upcoming year, when we're back to the 4th and 5th, somewhere in there, we're probably back to a more normal post-Labor Day start. I agree with you.
So
Holiday?
the second part was the Friday before the holiday weekend. If we do start pre-Labor Day on the 30th, would you want that Friday?
Yeah, I think that 4-day, I think if we're going to start them before Labor Day, having a 4-day weekend is at least kind of nice to let them go away if that's their choosing.
Yeah, and also they've been in non-school mode for 3 months. I think starting them a little slower than a full week is probably not a bad idea.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to go up through Friday, I would say we should start on Tuesday, because I think a 5-day week out of the gate might be a little rough for everybody, staff,
Tuesday?
students. Yeah. So the holiday this year, for December,
Right.
Christmas Eve is a Friday. So last year, it was a Thursday. Actually, it might have been a Wednesday, right? Because it was leap year. Do we have leap year this year? We did, right?
Yes.
2020? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh, I've got the calendar right here. Yes.
A question before we get to Christmas. What's our experience with Thanksgiving. With the Thanksgiving.
We
It's
give it a
always
month.
been Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
You're going Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Thank you.
So last year the holiday was Friday, and our break was, oh no, there was actually 8 days off because the first popped up to the next one. So we had Wednesday, and then the full following week, well, it hasn't happened yet. This year, we will have Wednesday through the following Friday off, and then obviously another weekend for the 1st and 2nd, so they'll start back on the 4th. So their last day is the 22nd, and they come back the 4th, and that's 8 days out of school. So if we were to match, I mean, to get through to the 3rd, if we had the whole week of the 27th, and then, I mean, you could still do Wednesday through Friday and just have the 21st be the last day. I mean, is that kind of what you're thinking, or?
So that was what I was going to pose to you. Would you want the Wednesday or start on Thursday? I mean, I propose Wednesday just because that's probably the
Propose
shortest.
Wednesday as the day off, or
The first day of the vacation.
first day
Yeah.
of vacation?
So they go Monday, Tuesday, and then they're
Yeah.
off until January 3rd.
Yes.
I would prefer to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and start the vacation on Thursday.
Me too.
And drop a day off the end.
Is that what you?
Do we want, I see lots of nodding, but I don't see any no nods. So we'll do a quick straw poll. So Thursday through the following Friday is the proposal on the table. So if you're in favor of Thursday, Friday, and the following week. Okay. All right. Okay, one more.
I skipped it chronologically. So this year, because it's a presidential election, we chose to do November 3rd, which is a Tuesday, as a day off. And so normally we had not done that. We'd done a PLD day on a Friday. So the discussion really is, do you want to continue with the election day, or would you rather have us have our PLD day on a Friday sometime in November? And the upside and the downside is, the upside to having it on election day would be the security in the schools, that some people have. Is a couple of schools where they do the election, which some have been concerned in the past. And the flipping it the other way, you're not breaking it up a week for the kids. You come Monday, you stay home Tuesday, you come back Wednesday. So, and it's not an election, I mean, it's always an election year, but not a presidential one this coming year. So that's for your discussion.
I do not like to have election day off on Tuesday, so I would rather have a Friday for the PLD.
Yeah, I mean, the only two schools it impacts are Durham and the high school. The high school, it seems, has a better way of cordoning off the election portion by getting them in through the gym and having that side door. I mean, the issue for Durham has been there's no way to prevent people from just going directly into the school from the gym. And so that was the concern, the security concern there. And so the elections have moved to another place in town, except for big elections like the presidential one that couldn't handle, don't have the space for it. So, I mean, I have heard some rumblings that it's not great to move your polling place around. Like, oh, where am I going this time? Do I go to the school? Do I go to the AMVETS? And you know, I think there's some validity to that, but. I mean, I guess I'd rather figure out a way to secure the location and keep it always at the school and not necessarily have to have that be a day off. I think it's tough for parents on a Tuesday. So I'd be in favor of a Friday.
Okay. And vacations, those are always on the Patriots' Day and the President's Day, those weeks. So on this calendar would be the week of February 21st and the week of being the Monday, and then April 18th. Those would be our vacation, the 2 vacation weeks that we traditionally have.
I mean, Kate and I both say this every year. I think, well, I don't know if she says it for the same reason that I do, but I think February vacation exists largely because of a basketball tournament, statewide basketball tournament, and that just kind of, we don't make other accommodations for any other activity statewide, so it just seems silly to me.
Is it a state thing? Like,
it's a state thing. Yeah, I grew up with it. I mean,
no, I just mean, would the state have to decide as a whole to get rid of those vacations? Right? It's not really.
No.
Oh no,
No.
I mean, we have other sports that go to play tournaments, and or who make it to the finals, and they miss school, and I don't quite understand why this is always a break. It seems really quick after kids are back to school. It seems disruptive. I know a lot of people like to ski. I would personally rather see us move to one winter break in March and move April to March and not have February. But Kate and I were always in the minority.
No, I'm with you. I'm in the minority with you too.
I don't think it's a minority. I think a lot of people like sort of the big picture people agree. I just don't know how that would work. Like, if, like you said, we have to be 5 days.
It wouldn't work that way. But what I can promise, and I promised the last 3 years, and I have done, is I bring it up at our meeting every single time. There's been a change in superintendency, so maybe.
Seems like it would
doubt
have to
it,
be
but I'll check.
bigger discussion. But
And one of the reasons why I like this is what it was like in Texas. I don't know, and it worked really great there. It also typically will coincide with a college break. So for siblings, who have one in college, it's kind of nice. I grew up in a college town, so that was something we always sort of wanted. So those are the arguments in favor. Understand it might be a big ask, but I think it would be great if we could get there.
I wonder if we would have better success. I mean, I don't think we're going to have any success, but I think we should try, because I agree. I think it's way too fast after the December break for another week off, because they do get the day off because that's a national holiday. So, for those 4 additional days, start with the February break, and then and leave April alone. So we don't change everything all at once, and then we can, approach hey, do we like it in April or do we like it in March? While it's not a state requirement because of Region 10, we would have to get the buy-in of those 2 districts to be willing to consider it. So we'll send Cynthia off to fight that battle again.
So are you, just to clarify, are you suggesting that I just say cancel February break and then keep the April one? Don't put anything in March.
I think the primary goal is cancel February break, and I mean, that's not our primary goal this year, but in terms of this discussion, that's what we want to accomplish. And if they said we'd only do that if we switched it to March, or we'd only do that if we kept it in April, okay. I mean, that's my take on it. Valerie?
I would start with a proposal that we do switch to March, because for student learning it makes a lot more sense. I mean, having them go through January, February, March, and then almost to late April with no long breaks is a long stretch, and then there's very little left of the year. So I would start for the sake of student learning, which is what we're after, and trying to maximize their time here and their ability to absorb, that we try to switch it to March.
So have March and no February, April.
No February, and switch April to March. And if they say, well, no, we would consider doing without the February vacation, but we want to keep it in April as is, then so be it. But I would start with a negotiation position that March makes most sense to have the vacation.
And I would say that if they're on board, then I'm okay with an after Labor Day start. Lindsay.
I would be curious. I feel like it's a big change. I would be curious how faculty, staff, and families feel. I mean, I'm on board. I loved Australia. The kids went to school 10 weeks at a time, then they had 2 weeks, then 10 weeks, 2 weeks off. So if we were going to do it in March, I'd push for having a 2-week break. But I do feel like I wouldn't be comfortable just pulling the rug on the community. And I was watching Jen over there, kind of wondering what her staff, it feels pretty big to me. That's me. I love the idea in theory. The 10 weeks when kids crunch for 10 weeks hard and then to give them a good solid rest is wonderful. But it does feel like a pretty big thing to me. It feels like something that strategic communicate, it feels like a survey or something to families. But that's me, and I'm still fairly new, so.
Susanna.
Thank you. Yeah, I have, I've been in both systems myself, and I think they both have pluses and minuses. But I also feel that consideration of families and community is integral. I mean, as Lindsay was saying, I'm not also comfortable just making a radical change without input. Whether it's 1 week in March or 2, I'm not really bothered. The other thing, though, is that I'd want to just know whether other communities are thinking similarly, because it's really nice when breaks line up in different communities. It helps with things like childcare over breaks and the camps that go on during vacations, that towns rely on each other for that, and also for programs that run with multiple districts. Myself running one of those, it's really nice to know. It just adds a different layer of challenge when breaks don't line up. And so that's not a reason not necessarily to do it, but I am aware of issues with childcare and summer or holiday break camps, that those are still accessible.
Just was doing a little research in here and found that it looks like February break actually started in the 70s as a response to the oil crisis. The schools were looking at ways to save money on heating and transportation. So I was like, so just thought I'd add that. So.
Thank you for the history lesson. And something that Susanna just brought to my mind is when we're talking about staff, is staff with kids that work somewhere else, that live somewhere else and teach here. That could be a huge issue, right? I mean, they may work in 75 in Brunswick if we all did it together, but they may live in Yarmouth, they may live in Cape, or anywhere else around us. And if our vacations, those have always been everybody's vacation is kind of the same weeks. So to your point of, does it have to be a statewide decision? I don't think it does. But from a logistics standpoint, that, thank you guys for raising that question around, the staff and the impact on them if they live somewhere else. That could be a problem. Dwight.
What's our attendance experience on the Friday before the February and April break?
So we which one is it that we don't have? We have a PLD day usually on February, the one before February, and the other one is a compensation day for parent-teacher conferences. So it's 0. Or no, it's 100% on PLD days, or it should be. And then the other day, they have a compensation day.
Actually, this year it's the furlough day, so
it'll
be 0.
This year, different than other years, it's the furlough day, so nobody's working this one.
Yeah.
So as you guys were discussing the impact on staff and other families, sounds like this is a discussion, Becky, for the group of superintendents, more than just Region 10. So I would make a special request to you to bring it up with the Cumberland County superintendents at their meeting and see whether they would consider it. Because if we all do it as a block, then it's the odds that it will be a success are much higher.
Yeah, we could easily do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Good luck. All right, as usual, I've lost my agenda. Oh, here we go. Okay, board discussion on, oh no, we're doing open campus now? Yeah. Okay, so we're adding in 13B and a half for open campus.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Jen Gulko from the high school. So I'm here tonight to make a request that you have in front of you to consider making a revision to our policy about open campus. And so there's a couple of reasons why I'm coming to you tonight for this. The first is that, as I think you all know, we've done extensive planning over the summer for the logistics of reopening the high school. Things have gone very well. We had a great day today, relatively smooth, other than teacher said that students, they can't tell if they're smiling at their jokes, which is really hard. And so that was a tough intro today. But lunch continues to pose a challenge for us. Throughout the summer, we were really hoping that by the time that we got to September, that the governor would have relaxed on some, relaxed is a bad word. It's been a long day, so I don't have a better word. But that she would have changed or revised the guidelines, and we would be at a place where we could have 100 students in the same location indoors if the COVID numbers had improved in the situation. And it has not. And so we are at 50 people. And so we have, on any given day, about 300 students who could potentially be in school. That's not with counting absences or seniors on open campus, but our enrollment right now is 612 students. And so dividing that by the 2 days, which is not perfectly divided, we're looking at about 300 students per day. We have 2 lunches, 150 students, which means we need a minimum of 3 locations for lunch right now, which we're managing. We were okay, but we are full. And so that has certainly posed a challenge. If there is a day, for example, where it's not good weather and our seniors don't use their open campus privileges, then we need to ensure that we have a seat for every single student in each of the cohorts. So what I'm asking the board to consider is to extend the open campus privileges to juniors. Right now, juniors are able to apply for early dismissal at the end of the day and late arrival in the morning. They are not allowed to leave in the middle of the day. Seniors are allowed to do that. I believe that our juniors are responsible if we believe that they can come late and leave early. I am confident that our juniors will be able to take this responsibility and be able to leave during the day. They also would be held to what the seniors are held to, which is good academic standing. And if a student is not in good academic standing or behavioral standing, then those privileges are revoked for a period of time until the student can earn the privileges back. So those would be in place for the juniors as well. Also, I meet weekly with a group, a smaller group of Cumberland County principals. We are the only school that has this in policy. Other schools have this as a school protocol or procedure, and they have changed it already. Some have gone to open campus for 9 through 12, which we are not considering. But the other schools that are in the group that I meet with, everyone has gone to open campus for juniors and seniors, feeling like this allows for more space at lunch, more space at study hall, and if and when we go to green, we would likely need to increase the number of lunches, and we still need as many students off campus as we possibly can who qualify for that. So that is what we're hoping for. You know, we will still keep a very close tabs on our juniors, making sure that they're academically and behaviorally in good standing. There happens to be a student on the board who might have an opinion on this, but also wanted to see if anybody had questions.
I'm in favor of this, but I'm just wondering if, I would hate to offer it and then take it away. Would it be taken away in any instance? I mean, not for an individual, but would you extend this to juniors and then let's say COVID magically disappears and we're not just green, we're like back to normal? Would you then say, oh, juniors, you have to stay on campus now? Because I think that would be hard.
Well, as it's a board policy, that would be a board decision right now, unless there was a change to considering that the policy committee discusses if this is a policy or not.
So you're just asking for a reprieve for the moment. You're not asking us to change policy.
Right, because
So
that would,
one-year exception is what?
because that would have to go through the policy committee, I would imagine.
Beth?
And how many students do you think would be able to take advantage of that to remove them from the problem of the 150 that all need lunch?
I think it would be a significant number because we have a lot of juniors who are in good academic and behavioral standing, and I think that it can be a carrot for students sometimes who are struggling a little bit. So I would think that it would be, it is always a significant portion of our seniors. So last year, we had an exceptionally high number last year where we had 90 seniors who were eligible for privileges. So I would imagine that the number of juniors would be close. We also have a very large junior class. This is one of the bubble classes. So they're at around 160 students.
Yeah, I guess I'll add my comment to that. I was actually addressed by a few people, it's kind of ironic, like 5 hours ago, 6 hours ago, that were asking me if I could maybe talk to you guys about that. But I definitely think that it would be a good idea. For one, I saw at lunch today how many juniors are here at lunch. But I also think that it's a motivator to do well, to kind of, as long as you've got the standards high enough. I know last year when I only had late arrival, but so it's not quite comparable to open campus, but just being able to sleep in was a very, very big motivator to, so I think that's important to note, and I think it's a good idea.
I am in support of the proposal. I am curious to know, on rainy days, you will still have the same big problem, right? Because do you expect juniors to leave on rainy days, or based on the track record of seniors who have open campus privileges, do they stay on rainy days or do they leave anyway?
They usually leave. They're quite resilient in the rain. Sometimes if the really stormy cold and the driving is not great, that's when we see students stay. In those days, if that is to happen, we can make kind of an emergency plan and open up some classrooms and do things like that. If we, because usually we can somewhat predict the weather, but so, but that we would be able to accommodate on a kind of case-by-case basis.
Okay.
I'm in favor of this as well, and I think any opportunity that we can reward kids for doing well in school and doing well, with their behavior in school, it's off, but I'm not necessarily saying that maybe we should look at this as something to continue at some point, but I'm totally in favor of this this year.
I'd also be in favor of it and making it for a full year, the full year exemption, regardless of what happens this year, especially if it takes care of the problem immediately with the lunch and for reward and motivation purposes. One question though, I mean, you're mentioning that quite a few juniors would be expected to be eligible for this, but then you also a moment ago in the rain, talking about rain, mentioned about driving conditions. Are people who take advantage of this usually car drivers? And if so, what's do juniors have cars to the degree that seniors have cars? I guess if you're late arrival, maybe, transportation has to be factored in there. So maybe people do have cars. I don't know. That's just.
So we have a high number of juniors who drive, and so we have a senior parking lot, but the juniors are able to park in what they call the gap lot. And so there is a transportation factor if they are going further than to town. So some students would just go to town, but there's fewer students that do that. It would be more predominantly used by kids who have a chunk of time off. So if they have a study hall and then lunch, then they're able to use that time. Some kids choose to go home and study. Some have, other responsibilities that they might take care of, but it is used a lot by the kids who have transportation.
And we have provisions to monitor kids driving together. With that, just because with age and license, how soon people have licenses and just how that's monitored, and so that we're not getting people sneaking off.
Sorry, I didn't hear
Just
that.
so that we're not getting people driving off together who shouldn't be driving other students.
Right.
Especially with the younger.
So that's tougher for us to monitor. And so we have guidelines that we put into place. One of the things that I can say for an example of that is we are really strict about that of driving to and from Region 10. But we've also put some provisions in place where both parents, we tried to be more flexible with that if two students are neighbors, at first we had just said siblings, but if two students were neighbors and it makes sense to carpool, and so if we know that there's a situation like that, we'll reach out to parents and talk to them explicitly, because a lot of times it does make sense, if they are neighbors and saving gas and coming together, cousins, all these other situations. But we do the best that we can to monitor that. It'll be a little bit tougher that they park off campus.
And with lunch, where they're not coming to or from home.
Right. But so every student, every single time they leave the building, has to sign in and out. So we know exactly what time they leave, exactly what time they come back. Our office staff is really good at seeing who goes out together. So they kind of notice those patterns. That it's not perfect, but we definitely pay attention to it.
Valerie.
Thank you. So Jen, I would go even a step further and ask that maybe the younger students, freshmen and sophomores, can use outdoor spaces for lunch too. I mean, it's a really nice break for them to be able to go and get some fresh air. So even if it were the Peace Garden or other spaces, I would totally encourage the staff to try to find a way to monitor lunch in outdoor spaces as well. They're not wearing masks, so outdoor makes whole lot of sense. Mm-hmm. But in addition, it's really great for their well-being to be able to leave the indoor space at some point during the day, and lunch seems to be like a good fit.
So one of the things that we're doing is that these are our new tables, unfortunately, after the renovated beautiful tables. Those are in storage because those are 5 feet, not 6 feet. And so we're putting a table outside all of these windows. What's a challenge right now is supervision, because we have so many different, so today we had 4 different locations for lunch. And so this might, if we have fewer students, we might be able to shift one of the people who are supervising to go outside with a group. Right now, we feel like we can monitor the kids right outside the window because we have supervision right here, and somebody can easily kind of go between the doors. Our hope is to get kids up to the bleachers. The Peace Garden is tough because the windows are all open to classrooms that are conducting classes. They're using that as an outdoor learning space. Lunch is a little bit tougher. But hopefully if the numbers were reduced, then we would be able to take some supervision to more spaces outside.
Okay, so I'm in favor of this. I would also be in favor of maybe having the policy committee look at the policy to see if it needs to be in there or if it is better housed as a procedure or protocol for the high school. Obviously not something we have to do tonight, but just it seems like that's probably where it belongs as opposed to into the policy. Yeah.
I was going to request that maybe we ask Jen to give us a quick update on that in her December update to us, and then the policy committee would have time to look at that if we want to consider a revision so that it's in place before the start of next school year, so there's not a hurdle to overcome.
I don't really have a say, but I would totally be in favor of the committee looking at that, because just hearing from the other principals, one of the principal of South Portland, who's in my small group, used to be a teacher here at Freeport, and shared that it way predates me to some challenges with businesses in a couple of particular years, and then it came to the board to be board policy. But like I said, we are the only ones, so I think that it seems to me that it would be appropriate that the committee would tackle that.
And I think we should let Liam take full credit for this when he goes back to his classmates. Look what I got for you guys. You're not even going to believe this.
You can send
Look
the
what I
email.
deliver.
You can send the email tomorrow.
Okay, so do you have a motion that you want us to?
I was gonna read
Sure.
what Jen put here for us. Make a motion that the board make a one-year exception to the policy JHCA-R Freeport High School Senior Open Campus Privilege Regulations.
Susanna, thank you. Any other questions before we vote? Okay, all those in favor? Great, none opposed. Thank you, Jen.
very much. Appreciate it.
Jen, could you tell us quickly how many synchronous classes are going on at the high school?
So it's gonna take me a minute to look up the exact number. I can tell you the exact number of students. So we are still under 10%. We're at right about 50 students today. And for the board members that came for the walkthrough, I shared that at first we just thought that we would start with, I also have to spell synchronous correctly. We thought that we would just start with a handful of teachers. Our goal was to have 5. And now this isn't the total number of teachers, but the total number of classes that are being synchronously taught is 42, which is wonderful. And so there is a class represented that's synchronous in every department. So this was still optional, so all of these teachers chose to be a part of this. We're learning a lot about technology. Technology is a real challenge. One of the things that we're so grateful that we were able to do, if you visited the Durham school, is that they have those I think other schools have it too, but I know it at best at the Durham school that they have the classroom microphones. We've put those in. Our teachers are really excited about it. So it's an unbelievable help to understand the teacher. But the kids who are online can't hear the kids who are in the classroom very well. Or at all, they can't hear at all. So if there's a discussion, they can hear the teacher responding. And so we are trying some new pieces of technology, some microphones and things like that. But technology is definitely a piece of that. The teachers are finding they're spending a lot of time trying to manage the kids that are on the computer to make sure that they're set and ready to go. So there's some challenges with it, but I think our teachers have just had an outstanding attitude. They're sharing a lot of resources. But today it was definitely a comment that I heard after school from teachers of that was a real challenge, just that learning curve. For example, so for our planning days, I had at least 2 to 5 teachers who were out for different reasons who were synchronous. And half the time that I was talking, they were staring at blue sky because I was over here and forgot that the computer was right there. So those are some challenges that we're playing around with. But I think we're going to have some great data. So when I share later of how this is going, but I think that the attitude of teachers has been outstanding.
My kid was in 2 synchronous classes today and different approaches, and she thought they went well, but who's the teacher, APUSH teacher, I'm forgetting his name.
Mr. Dearberg.
Yeah, he had the kids who are in the classroom also on Zoom, because there's a lot of discussion in that class, and she thought that went really great. So just that might work better as one option.
Great. Glad to hear that. Good.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, board discussion on fall sports. Craig.
Good evening, Craig Sickles, Director of Athletics. So as you know, we opened school in a hybrid yellow model. In the opening school documents, there is a piece regarding athletics in yellow. So yesterday, we started in yellow and following that plan to a T, and not coincidentally, Our yellow plan is almost exactly the same as the Maine Principals Association Phase 4. So we have, as of tonight, we had about 30 field hockey players, 60 girls soccer players, 66 boys soccer, 25 football, 10 cheer, 12 golf, and 40 cross country for about 250 kids participating in the last couple of days. Some of the key elements of the yellow phase, as well as the Maine Principals Association Phase 4, is that everything remains 6 feet of distance. So everything that's done, it's all individual skill development. There's no one-on-one. There's no offense, defense, because you can't have offense, defense, and be 6 feet apart. So it's really individual skill development, and everything that's been done has been done at 6 feet or as best that we can. That's a learning curve as well. I think the more they do it, the better they'll get at it. Kids and coaches have been great. We set up every practice site with yellow zip ties across the top of all of our chain link fence that stick up about 6 inches, and they're all 6 feet apart. The kids hand sanitize before they enter the facility, and then they go find a place up against the fence, and that's where they drop their bags and their water and their equipment, and they stay at that location until the coach does their attendance and asks them if they've done the COVID self-assessment at home prior to coming to practice. And then at that point, they're put in pods. The pods are probably going to change next week because right now everybody's together, which is unfortunate, but everybody's together. We've got 66 boys on the field at once. So next week, after we have tryouts and we have varsity, JV, and first team, then they'll get into pods for the rest of the season, and those will be consistent. We're going to take attendance via a Google Doc, and we'll see what pods the kids are in, and the attendance is taken. So if we have to contact trace, we'll have that information. After the first 2 days, I would say it's going great. The kids are really happy to be out there, and it's just fun to see. So I'll answer any questions that anybody might have.
I realized I'm not drinking water because I have this mask on. Hydration, it's important. Yeah, I have a question about, I don't know if this is for you, Craig, or who it's for, but to my understanding, there's a discrepancy between this Phase 4 guideline for sports and guidelines for curricular PE and music classes. And the discrepancy is an 8-foot discrepancy. So for sports, if you're outdoors, you can be not wearing a mask and be within 6 feet of each other, but for curricular things, you have to be, if you could be outside not wearing a mask, but with 14 feet. And it sounds like that's a bit of a conundrum for messaging to students, being in different environments. And as a parent, I'm curious about how we're communicating that as well.
Sure, so let me read you an email that was sent out by the email this afternoon. So since the Maine Principals Association came out now a week or a half or so ago and said, let's play ball, there was a DOE document opening up schools that talked about physical education classes outside being 14 feet apart. But the Department of Health and Human Services summer sports programs didn't have that. So the MPA was kind of confused. What do we go by? Do we go by phys ed, or do we go by what's gone on all summer long excuse me, in all of those summer activities? And so that's when the DOE came out and said you should not use the 14-foot phys ed because the diversity in the phys ed class and the requirement behind it is different than the diversity in a athletic team, and it's voluntary. So that's when the MPA then went in their direction, and when it finally came out, the DOE, the CDC kind of put a hold on it. So I'm kind of glad now that the governor has got involved, which I think maybe it should have happened a long time ago instead of leaving the MPA out there all by themselves. There's a COVID hierarchy, and those of you who have sat in on my parent information meetings twice now, the COVID hierarchy is the governor, the CDC, the DOE, the DHHS, the superintendents, the MPA, and the athletic directors, and the superintendent and school boards together. And so every decision that's been made and where we find ourselves in today has been made by people who are above the Maine Principals Association. So it's nice now that those people are now working with the MPA. So here's the email that I just got. My phone is blowing up. A meeting took place this afternoon between the MPA, the Department of Health and Human Services, Maine School Superintendents Association, Maine School Board Association, the DOE, and the Governor's Office. Consensus on the guidelines has been reached with the exception of a few minor details. The finished document will be finalized and shared with MPA member schools at some point tomorrow. So we're going to get that tomorrow. I should have hydrated myself. So we're going to get that at some time tomorrow that tells us what Monday can and cannot look like. So I guess my recommendation, so currently we're following our own yellow guidelines, which is the exact same as the MPA's Phase 4. My recommendation to you would be whatever all these lettered groups agree on and recommend. I would recommend that that's what we follow.
So Craig, I'm curious to know what's the status with competitions.
Well, we don't know because it hasn't. We don't know what that's going to be. We don't know what they're going to say. So the athletic directors since March have been planning for Plan B, Plan C, we're on Plan F right now. So we've had soccer and field hockey and football schedules handed out based on these dates. Then the dates change, and we've had to go back and change them again. So all of our schedules are going to be regional in nature. So, for instance, Brunswick and Mount Ararat are in what's called the Kennebec Valley Athletic Conference, the KVAC. And we're in the Western Maine Conference, the WMC. We don't play each other during the regular season just because of the geographics, the school makeup, classification. But our field hockey schedule has us playing Brunswick and Mount Ararat twice. It's because it's close, it's regional. We can bus the JV team over, drop them off, come back, get the varsity team, and take them over. You can't do that if you're playing Lake Region or Freiburg. So the soccer schedule is being made up the exact same way, where we're all playing regional. Instead of playing 8 schools once, we're playing 4 schools twice, if that makes sense.
So what I'm hearing is that at this moment, it is permitted to compete against other schools per MPA rules.
No, that's not what I'm saying. We don't know what's permitted until the next set of guidelines comes out tomorrow.
Okay, so these schedules are tentative.
It's Plan F.
Okay.
Because we can't wait. We can't wait. So
right.
We're ready to go because we got to get officials. We got to get busing. So we can't wait. So all of our schedules are ready to go when we're given the go.
Okay. So if there are going to be competitions, I would like to suggest that this plan, yellow plan, include a letter or a number, it's all numbers, that says that student athletes who are not comfortable competing against students from other schools are not penalized. Because there's nothing here to say that if you don't feel safe and you don't want to compete, you won't be, sidelined on the team. And I wouldn't want that to happen. I suspect that most athletes will want to compete, but I think it would be nice to have it stated expressly that there will be no penalties for students who choose not to compete during COVID times.
If the pros can do it, I'm sure we can do it.
don't have a question. Thanks, Craig. But I just wanted to point out the 100 people on the first page and under plan and expectations, number 5. Does that just mean for outdoor activities? Because I know right now it's still limited to 50. So that would that be 50 for indoor athletics?
Yes. Well, again, it says. So if you look at the last paragraph, during the yellow level, there may be times when practices, scrimmage games, and athletic contests would resume as normal. However, crowd and spectator size may be limited to follow the state and CDC guidelines whenever possible. So we have to follow those guidelines, whether it's indoors or outdoors. So the Western Maine Conference, because our schedules now cross 3 conferences, the Western Maine Conference has discussed spectators. And if you have 2 JV teams, 2 varsity teams, officials, the trainer, the scorekeeper, myself, you're close to 100 right there. And so we've talked about maybe the conference coming up with a blanket statement policy. One of the things we've also discussed is maybe having the home school have the option, the exception to allow senior parents in, depending on the number of seniors on the team and where you are with your count of 100. Our field hockey team has 15 seniors playing. So if they each bring 2, there's another 30 people, to add, which I'm not sure we could add. Field hockey teams are a little bit smaller, but still we would have to take that into consideration and maybe let 1 parent from each senior. But that's an option we're looking at. We've also had discussions with the KVAC and the SMAA. The SMAA is the Southern Maine Activities Association. That is the schools, Class A schools to the south of us. So the 3 of us talked. I don't think we're going to come up all agreeing on the same thing, but I think we're going to start at no spectators, but the home school can then adjust to however they think they can meet that 100 mandate. And if it goes to 150, and if it goes to 2, then we'll just have to, manage those numbers.
Craig, has there been any talk of streaming options for the games so that parents can see from home or from their car or whatever?
Yep, so 2 different things have happened. So the National High School Federation, the NFHS, they have offered every high school in the country 2 what's called Pixel-Art cameras. Some of our schools in our conference have them now, mostly indoors. It's 1 camera that's mounted in the middle of the gym. It's unmanned, and you set it, you program it, and it automatically follows the play. A lot of the MPA basketball tournaments used that this winter. There is a subscription price to be paid by parents who want to watch that. We ordered 2 free cameras. They just emailed me today, and they want to install them. So we'll have them install the stadium first, and then we'll do the gym later. Until that gets set up, I've talked with Keith back here to help me out with some sort of either Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Then again, that's if games can be played, and if games are played, they probably won't start until September 24th or 25th.
So Craig, I want to backtrack and let you know that I've heard from a lot of student athletes who are very happy to be able to be practicing. So I should have said that up front, but I think you're doing a great job allowing these kids to be out there and do so in a safe way.
Thank you.
So back to my original question about messaging and this discrepancy between curricular and extracurricular athletics and music, curricular music. Personally, I've been a little hesitant about this. Just nervous about what it's like for an athlete to be out on the field with other athletes and potentially risking the health and safety of all of our students and our staff. However, I'm able to follow the guidance, the thoughtful guidance that I know all these groups that are meeting are putting together. But I am really uncomfortable with that discrepancy. It's not fair. And while I'm reading the paper and following this really closely, and I'm sure we all are, probably most kids aren't, and so, you know, they might be asking, why don't I have chorus, but I can play soccer? It's not fair. So I don't know if this is you, Becky, with your superintendent group, but I would ask that we push back or get in touch with the DOE or whomever and say, great, we'd love to start sports, but we also would like to see similar guidelines for your curricular programs where appropriate. You know, it doesn't make sense to sing inside right now. I understand that, but if athletes can practice without masks within 6 feet of each other, then singers should be able to sing, and instrumentalists should be able to play instruments, and PE should be able to do the exact same thing.
So I will say that we have pushed back and said, you know, this doesn't make any sense to us. And, you know, that what they have said is, you know, one's compulsory and the other one's not, right? So phys ed is compulsory and whether you play soccer is voluntary. I don't think for any of the superintendents they feel like that's a great answer. And so we have pushed back and said, you know, what is this? And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. So we'll continue to ask for, we don't know what's going to be. I think my recommendation, you know, Craig and I talked, is that, you know, we're willing to follow the CDC recommendations. And so I guess that's what I would like you guys to kind of consider tonight. And, you know, I don't know if you want an official vote or a straw vote, because as Craig said, depending on what they say, you know, this is something that I don't know when the first game is scheduled in your tentative schedules on Plan F.
So we're planning on having, so right now it's not tryouts. Right now it's the MPA Phase 4 and our yellow combined, and it's an extension of the summer season. So right now we're not having tryouts. On September 14th, when the MPA says that's the first day of the fall season, that's when we'll have tryouts. And the first allowable countable day to have a game is that the following Friday, which I think is the 24th or 25th. September 24th or 25th. So I think I need a little bit of direction, because on Monday, are we doing what the MPA and the CDC and the DHHS say we can do, or are we not doing something? I might add to Matty's thought is I have sent 2 emails to the town of Freeport chair, the town council, the town manager, and the members who are the advisory committee for the track and turf committee. The first email was alerting them to the lights being on a little bit later for practice, at least initially, so the kids without, you know, a vehicle or rides, we could have our practices later at night. Once we have our tryouts and our varsity teams are picked, the varsity teams will practice right after school, a little bit earlier, so that they're mostly juniors and seniors who have rides, and the JEVs will practice later, so mom and dad can help them ride. The second email I sent was to ask them around the PA system and music being played on the bleachers. So both the band and chorus teacher are thinking about going out and using the bleachers at social distancing marks and singing and playing their instruments outside. We were concerned with the neighbors. The neighborhood liaison did do a survey, and on both of those incidents, they were very supportive and felt as long as this was a one-year deal with the COVID and the lights, that they were fine. And they said as long as the singing and the band goes on during the school day, when most of them aren't home, they said that they were fine with that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig, for the sport work this year, and Becky about talking about the curricular side of things. I did have a couple questions. One is, as Vale mentioned about kids being benched or maybe given less priority if they're unable to, if for various reasons, compete. Just wondering, you had mentioned if the pros can do it, so can we. And I'm just wondering, is that saying that if the pros can compete, we should be able to compete? Or is that saying that if they can balance players that are uncomfortable to compete, we can do that as well?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
your last
just how
statement.
that fits within tryouts. You know,
How
how that fits within tryouts. So if I were trying out for soccer, but I know I can't compete, am I then having a lower rank in trying out, or am I still able to participate on the varsity team?
I'm not sure I can answer that question.
Okay.
I'll have to give that some thought.
Okay, because that would be something that, I guess going back to what Vali was saying, is that if I'm not able to compete, am I really able to participate in the sport, or am I going to be, you know, the person that, you know, running and catching the ball, you know, just being with everybody, but not actually engaging. So that's one question. And then on the voluntary issue, I understand the distinction between something being voluntary and something being involuntary, except so much of what we've been discussing with COVID is the actions of one affecting other people. So if we're bringing some people together and saying that, you know, they may have a greater risk, but this is a voluntary action, they're then coming to school with people who are not taking that risk. And so just wondering how the voluntary aspect fits in that and whether there's an issue there. That said, I also appreciate that you've talked about the music and outside and with the neighbors, and looking forward to hearing about that, and also glad that, you know, the play Antigone being performed outside that Liam was talking about earlier. So I like that we're examining that, but I do have a question about the voluntary and the tryouts and athlete positions. So thank you. And I realize that those aren't immediate answers that you have now, so just to keep in mind. Thanks.
Thanks, Craig, for all you're doing. I know it's like you already had a huge job, and this just added to it. My thing is, I think it would look great if the board had the falcon masks for our meetings. I think that's great. Is that something that was done for like the teachers, or was that just something that you did for yourself? It's a great idea.
No, I did these for the coaching staff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're all coaches, by the way.
You're good? Okay. Thank you, Craig. So we don't have a vote on here, but what I'm hearing you say is that if we want the kids to be able to participate beyond the phase 4 that's currently in our yellow plan, that you would need us on Monday, presuming that that's what comes out in the recommendations tomorrow from the MPA and the CDC and the DOE, all the letters, that you need us to do that.
Because the next board meeting is on the 23rd, you know, I just think for the messaging, we should know now kind of where the board is. We don't really have to have an official board vote, but I want at least a straw vote, if not an official one, because it's going to be a hot topic. Or it is a hot topic.
I'm like, going to be? Okay. Vali.
So to answer your question, for me, it really depends what the recommendations are. If they come back and say, we all compete and all social distancing rules and masking requirements are gone and you can just go back to games as if COVID had never been on the face of the earth, then I want to think about that, because like Susanna said, I'm not sure we want to encourage athletes to bring COVID into our school necessarily when we're taking so many precautions here. So does anyone have any inclination of which way this is going and how competitions could happen while still adhering to safety protocols that make sense in terms of not spreading?
So I guess, Craig, you could talk about what the MPA recommended, meaning, you know, a week or so, a couple of weeks ago when their recommendations came out.
Right,
What was,
so their recommendations were to follow what the DHHS had set up for summer sports and activities, which was no masks being worn while you were playing. And as I met with each of the groups yesterday and today, one of the things I said was, it's unfortunate that when the MPA a week and a half, 2 weeks ago said, let's play ball, the narrative behind that wasn't all the travel soccer, the club soccer, the AAU basketball, the wooden bat baseball league. Those all happened this summer. There was over 1,000 basketball games played inside at a soccer bubble with no masks on. And so the narrative wasn't, we can do this because we've done it all summer long. The narrative was Millinocket. And that one word means a lot. And I mentioned that to the kids, and I said, does anyone not know what Millinocket was? And in each of the groups, probably one or two hands went up. So I think they get it, but it's unfortunate that, summer happened with all these games going on, and there wasn't a breakout. And I think the rules and what will be in place now is even going to be more stringent, and it's going to be led by education-based athletics with education administrators in charge, not privately owned clubs, for-profit travel teams. So I think what you're going to get is what happened this summer, but in a much more safe, controlled, supervised, administered environment. The rumor is, and again, I have no idea what's going to come out tomorrow, but the athletic directors are anticipating that soccer players and field hockey players will have to wear masks while they play. I don't think golfers will. Cross country, the first initial guidelines that the MPA came out with is they would have to wear masks at the start line, and then when the gun went off and they started to run, then they could take their masks off. We've told soccer and field hockey players that the initial guidelines from the MPA was that a coach could only sub one person at the table at a time, and you had to be at the table with your mask on, and when you were beckoned in, you could take your mask off. So he said, you got to come up with a plan to what to do with that mask. Either put it in your bra up here or tuck it in your shorts, because when you come off the field, you got to put it right back on again while you're on the bench. So it's unfortunate that Millinocket happened. I'm glad we're not in York County, because there are going to be some schools that, because of that, don't even start sports. We're in hybrid, not so much, and don't take this the wrong way, but we're in hybrid not so much because of COVID, but because of spacing. If we had spacing, we'd have every kid in school, but we don't have the space to do that. So I think it's just unfortunate that the narrative wasn't summer happened with all these things, and it was done without an outbreak. And I think the MPA and schools can do it a lot better and safer and than what transpired this summer.
Well, based on what you just said, I would be comfortable saying yes to the guidelines that they propose tomorrow. I just didn't want to say blanket yes to anything, because I'm not sure I'm in that place. But it sounds like they're all considering doing things to limit contact, and in that case, then I would be okay with it.
Well, so the meeting this afternoon was the DHHS, the DOE, the Superintendent's Association, the School Board Association, and the Governor's Office, which is the CDC as well. Mm-hmm. And they've all agreed on the guidelines except some minor things. And I think some of those things that are more tricky are being tweaked and redefined and outlined. I don't know what those are, but we'll find out at some point tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I think the MPA rules they released were, they had some serious restrictions, and the DOE was not, and CDC were not in favor of it because it wasn't quite as far as they wanted them to go. So I would be really surprised to see it move back the other way towards willy-nilly. But, yeah, so Becky's checking the sheets to see in the existing plan if we could have tryouts under the existing plan? Or would that be more contact than is allowed unless we voted otherwise?
Well, the last sentence, the first sentence in the last paragraph. During this level, there may be a time when practices, scrimmage games, and athletic contests would resume as normal. So to me, as normal means we're going to have tryouts and practices as normal under whatever guidelines come out tomorrow. That's my interpretation.
There's such public outcry about sports. Parents are so invested, literally. They spent so much money on their soccer uniforms for their 3-year-olds. I mean, don't get me started. I'm going to go there later. And I suspect that had a part to play in NPA's guidelines being looser than what DOE's recommendations were. That said, I spoke with a colleague in Ohio yesterday, and they're playing football. It makes me nervous, but they're doing it. And what you say about doing it under the auspices of education, where we know we're doing temperature checks, gives me some comfort. I'm still quite nervous about it, but I want to thank you, Becky, for being part of the superintendent pushback, because it's really unfair for sports, just because their parents are the loudest, to get the green light, and so many other things are so restricted. And I hope we're going to continue this conversation after Craig is done, because I have more to say on this. But this should be equitable. PE should look like sport, and music should look like PE. And so I'd ask you to continue that pushback on behalf of your board, if my colleagues concur.
So can I just make it brief? I have a phys ed degree, and I taught phys ed for 20 some years, and I'm also an athletic coach and a director of athletics. Phys ed is not the same as sports. In a phys ed class, the level of student diversity, with level of physical fitness, with the level of physical ailments, with the level of socio-emotional stability. It is required. So everybody, regardless of who you are in school, has to take part in phys ed. And as a phys ed teacher, you have to make accommodations for all those students in your class. And you can only do what the whole class can do. And yes, you can break it up just like a coach can break up a practice, but it's vastly different than a varsity soccer team, a JV soccer team, the first team soccer team. So for me, when the DOE came out and said you shouldn't use the phys ed 14 feet, for me it made sense, because I've taught phys ed. I know what my phys ed class looked like. I also coach boys varsity basketball, and I know what my clientele was there. So I can do two vastly different things with those groups. You're not going to have a 300-pound student with asthma playing basketball, but you're going to have them in phys ed, and you have to accommodate that, so that person can be successful with whatever it is you're doing in phys ed. So to me, they're two different things.
Can I?
Yeah, well, yes. I think we're going to get there, but yeah, I think your point is taken, Maddie.
Well, I don't think I'm making the same point. I mean, I understand. That makes sense to me. I'm thinking about the risk factor. I'm thinking about the dispersal, the aerosolization of droplets from somebody engaged. So it seems to me that the risk factor is greater for those engaged in sports and in music than in PE, potentially. And that's the risk factor that I'm concerned about.
I would also be in support of deferring to the guidelines that come out tomorrow, although my concerns are more around athletic play between other towns, and like the idea of spreading between towns and students coming into contact with other with students from other schools or other parts of the region. And maybe it was just an oversight when we approved this plan, but the two areas where I would probably be most concerned would be locker rooms and busing, because then you would have students congregating, you wouldn't have them sort of moving around, and so I was wondering about those two things.
Yep, so locker rooms are closed during the school day. They're not being used. The locker rooms are not being used after school for our athletes. Football teams, if we have football, which again, I don't know how that survives tomorrow. But teams will have to come ready to play. That's why we move some of our practices later in the evening, because kids are being asked to leave the building when school's over and you can't come back in. So that's why we moved them later, so they could go home and change. So the locker rooms aren't being used. I got an email today from a parent that said her kid was told they had to change in the parking lot. Well, that's not the case. We're not telling kids to change in the parking lot. We have several bathrooms that are available after school, and 2 to 3 kids can go in at a time. The only team that will be practicing right after school at 2:45 will be girls field hockey, varsity, when we get there. So there's plenty enough bathrooms that they can take turns 2 and 3 at a time to go and change to get there. As far as busing, we'll have to follow the same bus guidelines as regular routes. Right now it's 1 to a seat unless there's family members. That's why I mentioned that if we're playing schools close and nearby, which we are, we can drive the JV team to Yarmouth for a 4:15 game, drop them off, come back to Freeport, pick up the varsity, and bring the varsity. So, and you know, I think a lot of parents will encourage parents driving their own kids to away games as well. But I think with the 26 number, I don't think there'll be a team that will be over 26. It can't be, because that's all we're allowed. So.
Susanna.
Thank you for that. I've got one quick question, and if I heard you correctly earlier, I believe you said that practices after school would be varsity teams earlier and JV teams, lower teams later in the evening, as a general.
So for this week only.
Or just, sorry, once practices get going.
Yep, so for this week only, we have the field hockey team going at 2:45. Everybody else either starts at 5 or 5:30. Boys soccer starts at 7 p.m. We did that because we wanted everybody to come. We wanted as many kids here as possible. We're not doing the 4:15 slot. We put field hockey first because there's only 3 or 4 freshmen who played last year as 8th grade. She's got 16 seniors. It's voluntary. Everybody can't go at night, so someone had to go early, and they're the team with the most number of seniors and juniors, so it made sense to keep them. Right now, we're not using the 4:15 slot because that's kind of tough to get home and get back to, even, you know, with a parent drive. Once we have tryouts, girls varsity field hockey will stay at 2:45. Boys and girls varsity soccer, again made up mostly of juniors and seniors, will go in the 4:15 slot. Everybody cross country will also go at 2:45. Those kids who aren't in school will be given the run, the workout for that day, and can do it at home on their own, which you can't really do any other sport. You've got to be at practice. So that's kind of our plan, and it's almost what we have done in the past anyway.
Okay, my concern with that, thank you. Just want to question on that is, especially looking at the younger class, although the 4:15 kind of changes that, I guess. I was sort of envisioning that the seniors and juniors being the majority of, I guess the varsity teams comprising the majority of juniors and seniors who have transportation, who are here right after school, and then having younger students who rely on parents to drive them later in the evening. And if parents aren't permitted to watch practices, that's taking, you know, parents who need to come in and then an hour later come back in and drive out.
You are correct.
Yeah, okay. And so just how much that impacts participation. And I was just wondering if, with the varsity, if you switched and had varsity later, you're having students that are more likely to be able to drive themselves and less reliant on parents. But then if there's the issue of the 4:15, of kids needing to leave anyway,
Right, they
I don't know
can't
that really
hang out,
changes.
they can't hang out for 4:15 practice.
are there places, and we don't, yeah, never mind. All right, thank you.
Just as a parent who has kids that have done athletics here at the high school, I mean, this really doesn't, the schedule doesn't sound like it's not a COVID schedule. I mean, this is always like an issue. So it's really has nothing to do with the COVID situation. I mean, it's always been all these athletic teams have all these different times. So I think that that's something that, I'm sure you've had to tweak it a little bit, but that's just the nature of how it works all the time.
So for the last, since we have had the turf, field hockey has gone at 2:45, girls soccer, varsity and JV at 4:15, boys varsity and JV at 5:45. So the only tweak to that is moving both JVs later at 5:45, so their parents can drive them back, and moving boys varsity from 5:45 to 4:15, where they have the vehicles and can get back for a 4:15 practice. Where if you're a freshman and a sophomore and you go home on a bus, how many actually have a ride back for a 4:15 practice?
Yeah, I guess I like seeing it that way. My concern wasn't so much whether this is a COVID special, it's just the fact that students previously could have stayed on campus or would have had more flexibility of where they could go to stay here for a 4:15 practice, whereas now they're reliant on that extra transportation. That was my point. Thank you.
Maddie.
So I had thought that Camden Hills had opted out. I don't know what I thought that meant, but now I understand that they're actually playing intramurals. So they still have sport. It's just it's within their existing school population. And I know it would be an unpopular solution, but it would alleviate Maura's concern about other teams. And I wonder if we should maybe even have that plan in contingency. I'm just wondering what the will of the board might be around that as an alternative.
I was actually going to ask that question, if the ruling came down that, there's just not going to be inter-school sports this fall because of the risks or whatever, what's the plan? Do these teams go home, or do they continue and have some sort of scrimmages or intramural, however you want to call it? I guess I was curious if that was required. I hadn't really considered it as an option, but I'm interested to hear what.
We would follow our yellow plan, which says if there's in-person teaching, there's in-person coaching. We would follow what the yellow plan says. It says 6 feet apart unless there's other guidelines to go by.
But it also says that it might resume like normal.
Correct.
So what does normal practice look like, I guess? So.
I think yellow is the color with the most shades. Green is green and red is red, but I think yellow, there's different shades of yellow. Becky doesn't want to hear that.
Used to be shades of gray, but now it's shades of yellow. Jen.
I want to ask I don't know what the Roberts rule right way to do it, but can we vote on this, whether we're going to do a straw poll or a regular vote, motion?
Just doesn't like Jen's. So Becky is looking for just a straw vote. It doesn't seem like it needs to be a full vote for, the board's approval of following the guidelines that come out tomorrow. Correct?
Yes, and I think if there was something in there that really worried me, I think I would then we would have to discuss whether we have another board meeting next Wednesday night, or we just then put it on there for discussion on our regular board meeting. But then that means that the following day, if we voted not to participate, then we're, there are games that are already scheduled that, that would be coming out at the last minute. So I think if there was something that really made me nervous about the guidelines, I'd probably request another board meeting with just that on the agenda.
So the straw vote, a yes vote, is in favor of following the guidelines from the DOE, CDC, MPA tomorrow. And a no vote would be that we'd want to see those ourselves before we wanted to move forward with them. Yes? Okay. Everyone understand what we're voting? Okay. So all those in favor. So it's not an official vote. This is straw vote. So we don't have a vote and a motion and a second. But all those in favor of following the guidelines that are released tomorrow. Okay. So there's your straw poll.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's helpful. Don't you, Craig?
I do, thank you.
And, I may make that an official vote on the 23rd.
Okay. All right. So the other item we added was Cynthia and the extracurricular update.
Okay, the handout is coming around, I see. I don't know if anybody touched this, but
I think you're almost all this. I mean, I think Jen was shorter, but I don't think she touched it, but go for it.
Should we wait?
I think you can start.
Okay. So, I don't have, let me back up. So what you're seeing is, some information on what we are currently, what we will be doing for music, instruction, band and chorus, general music, in the red, the green, yellow, green, and the remote. By grade levels or grade spans. So if you look at page 2 at the high school level, and I went and reviewed this with both Sean and Nate today, and right now we're in the yellow, so you can see that the band and chorus instruction is still being offered without instruments and in-person singing, and we just had a discussion on that. What's in italicized underneath that is we are considering finding ways to offer performance opportunities to students outdoors following all state DOE guidelines. So that segues nicely from Craig's report about having checked with the towns to see if we could do that, and surveyed or checked with parents to see if that would be a problem using the microphones and so forth. So, so that it's italicized because we hadn't finalized any of that, but that was being worked on. Current instruction in class focuses on content and units within the national music standards, and they're in parentheses for you to read. And then performance-based content will be offered to students who are at home or outside when possible. And then piano, guitar, and music technology, they can all resume nearly the same, nearly as the same as they would in prior years. The asterisk at the very bottom talks about specialty masks and bell covers that would be needed even for outside. So there's specialty masks, and both Aaron and Sean were explaining to me today that you'd have to purchase that kind of had like this slit made for singing, and then there's also a way to put you know, there's tucking your flute underneath, and none of them are great, but there's lots of other things that have to be considered, or those are final things that have to be considered. So the green plan is the same, parallels the yellow plan. So if we were to go to green in October, that would be the same. And then in the red plan, should we have to go to that, it's pretty much the standard. Instruction will still be offered, but scheduled remotely. The piano lab, with difference there is we've ordered some keyboards so that we would send those keyboards home with the students, and then they would play from home. And then guitar, we're kind of shy the number of guitars that we would need to do it in the red, so that they could do it at home. We would have to purchase 6 more guitars, but we think we could use our relief funds for that. And then music technology would continue the same. And then in the remote, those are online courses. In our reopening plan, it states that those would be online course offerings. So that's the high school, band, corps, and chorus, and all those other ones, guitar, piano, music technology. At the 6th through 8th grade level, I spoke with Aaron York today and Ray. If you look in the yellow, which is what we're in, band and chorus instruction still being offered, scheduled without instruments or in-person singing. All band and chorus lessons will be offered virtually, and those are the different teachers across the district that will do that. So on their off day, they schedule lessons, so they would be doing that remote, but not in person. In the green, percussion instruments, those you're not blowing air out, so that would still continue to be in person, following the CDC guidelines. And all students offered the option to switch to percussion. In other words, if there's students playing a different instrument and they would prefer to switch to percussion, you know, that might be suggested as an option to try another instrument and maybe go back. And then institute a general music class in 7th and 8th grade for all students. This is Ray and Aaron had talked about doing this in lieu of chorus and wind instrument instruction. And so that's what they're planning on doing. And then sign up for after school lessons remotely 1 hour each day. So there would be opportunities for that to happen. What's in yellow on the bottom, and I highlighted it and put question marks, is we're still brainstorming. It's still trying to figure out other things, right? In other ways, none of this is finite. If we can come up with an idea, and there's some great thinkers out there, and they've all talked together, and we're not sure if we can do this, but in the space that Erin is in, there's a band room, and then there's her office inside of that room. And her idea, or an idea, was that she would be in another place in the building and remotely zooming in, and the student would be alone because in green everybody's there, right? So she's not being able to do on the off days those lessons. So, and kids are pulled out anyway for those lessons. So she would have the student go in for their, I think it's about 30-minute lesson, and she would be someplace else so she could hear them. Then there would that space would be vacant for 30 minutes, and the other space, which is her office, would be used, or it would be sprayed down and all of that. So we're not sure if that's going to fly, but that's we're really trying to think, okay, when we're in the green, how is this going to look? We talked about even flexing her day, and that's not going to work. She would like it to work, but it just isn't possible for her to do that. And so that's what's there in yellow. And then in the red, band and chorus instruction would still be offered, scheduled remotely, and then all band and chorus lessons the same, offered by those people. And remote, all band and chorus lessons will be offered virtually each week. So they're connecting, I believe at FMS, there are 2 remote learners right now that are either in band or chorus, I'm not sure which, that she's reaching out to, and they're going to continue to have there. And then just below that is just a paragraph of what the guidelines are. On the next page, I worked with Ben Potvin today, and we worked through what's happening in general music, chorus, and band. And so in the yellow, there's in-person instruction, the specialist rotation. So I think you recall that we're trying to limit for those itinerant staff that are, switching. Same thing inside the building, sticking with a group, same specialist for a longer period of time, and then rotating to another. So if there should be an outbreak or a particular room, that it limits the specialist having to be out. We might just be one specialist and not all of the specialists. There's no recorder or singing. In-person instruction for chorus is no singing, but it can be virtually synchronous lessons weekly, and then band, in-person instruction, percussion only. And so, and this, if you call, I think in the 5th grade level is their first introduction, really, other than recorder. And I think Pownell might start in 4th grade, but for the most part, in 5th grade, that's their introduction. So they would be introduced to percussion only for this year. And then in the green, it's the same. And then in red, virtual asynchronous lessons weekly, and chorus, the same, and band. And then remote, just general music is what's being offered. At this time, weekly asynchronous lessons posted on the Google Classroom. And there would be no band and chorus. They're trying, I said TBD, which means to be determined. We're trying to figure out what that might look like. So that's not necessarily comprehensive. I think it's comprehensive, but it's probably not, there's more that could be added to it, because we are still trying to, they did a lot of work in August, and I was part of one of those meetings with them, and they're very grateful they've had the time to work together to work things out together and come up with ideas and share ideas. So and then the last page I added this. It's not music, but it's a theater, and it was mentioned by Liam tonight, and I think Craig as well, so that there is the outdoor Greek play that's going to happen, and it's not a musical, and they're going to be spaced out, only so many interacting at once. So I thought I would add that to this tonight. This came from an email that Natalie Safley had sent out yesterday, and I just picked out some of the bullets that she had to share what it would look like. So that's where we're at right now, and if you have further questions, I'd be happy to research those. I probably don't have all of those answers for you tonight, but I think they've done a really nice job of trying to make it work. And I can tell you, Ben is very, very involved. Our music teacher at Mass Landing, at the state level and even the national level. So he follows, he created this, and he follows these guidelines, and he could tell you where any particular guideline is in this graphic here. And I know he's online tonight. So hi, Ben.
I love that they picked a play that's historically, should be performed outside.
Yes.
Right? I mean, these are traditionally would be done outside. I love that.
Yeah. A tragedy.
Thank you for pulling this together. This is what I asked for. And I've been wanting to. I wanted to talk about this in our summer meetings, but we had so much on our plate and so much public comment that I realized we couldn't, so I didn't push it. But it has been a little frustrating and I wish we could have gotten this at the start of the meeting too, because it's a lot to take in, and this is exactly the level of detail that I've wanted. I'm not thrilled with it, although I'm thrilled with our staff. I think I'm familiar with many of our staff, and they are amazing. Mr. Potvin is fantastic, and they're very creative. I'm very concerned that in a district where our mission is to, in part, spark creativity and nurture passions, that we don't have enough opportunity for kids to be together and make art together, because that's a significant part of what nurtures this kind of creativity and passion in a child. And kids are at risk, not just for leaving the arts in the middle school years, which is where it typically happens, but many kids who find themselves in the arts are at risk for a number of other reasons. They're the quiet outliers, not all of them, but many, who don't find a home until they do tech for a play, or they realize that they're good at an instrument, or that they like an instrument, whether they're good at it or not. They don't meet other outliers until they find themselves sitting in a chorus, you know, and they find their comfort there. And without the opportunity to participate in some kind of an ensemble, we're likely to lose them. It's already not cool for too many kids, sadly. As cool as we all know it is, there's a period in most kids' lives where it doesn't feel cool to be involved in the arts, and they drop out. So I understand we're being very cautious, and I appreciate that a great deal. But the long-term repercussions could be that we don't have high school band and chorus and drama happening because we lost a lot of kids in middle school. I'm very concerned about that, and not just like the quality. It's of course I love quality, but just that as a really important social and mental health outlet for these kids. I do believe that the guidelines from the state have been really slow to evolve. I've been watching this kind of closely. I'm grateful for the people at the state level who in the discussion around sports say, and the arts, 'cause it's so important. And arts parents aren't as loud as sports parents are, but it's important. So I understand that we maybe are late to put our plans in place because we've been waiting for them. But I think they're also evolving, and I hope they're also evolving. And per our earlier discussion, I hope that we could see a little bit more equity in how we treat the arts with regard to it and how we treat sport. I think we need to be finding a way to get some ensemble work, even if it's 2 or 3 kids at a time, in an outdoor space in our schools, because the individual lessons and music theory instruction, I don't think it's going to cut it for a lot of kids. And I defer to the expertise of our music teachers, but I would ask that we prioritize that opportunity for kids to do the arts together. I think it's critical.
I echo what Maddie said, and I have specific concerns that at the high school level, that, you know, performance-based content will be offered to students who are at home or outside when possible, but there's nothing at the middle school for that. And that's disappointing. In the same way, I feel that the loss of the ensemble thing, and I understand obviously all the restrictions the same way, but I would be very disappointed. I mean, I know that we have a lot of restrictions, but I feel like with all the work that's going to try to get the high school kids outside, that we need to be doing that same work at the middle school and get those kids outside to perform and sing or do whatever they need to do at that level as well. Oh, and the other thing is the lessons are offered at the middle school virtually, but it's also, as far as my understanding, that it's a one-on-one thing virtually. So again, that puts a lot of pressure on somebody that maybe feels more comfortable in the group sort of ensemble to all of a sudden only be introduced individually. And I'm not sure what's being considered as far as curriculum, just, you know, whether it's the same sort of theory stuff, or are they actually going to be, you know, giving the kids, I mean, if they're distant, they can sing. I mean, if they're not, you know, if they're at home, they could sing. And is music going to be taught, or is it, or like, you know, songs going to be taught, or is it just theory and listening to other stuff? And, you know, which again, I feel is going to lose a lot of kids. And the other thing I noticed quickly was that at the elementary level, the chorus is having virtual synchronous lessons weekly, and I don't understand why that's, you know, why it can be done at the elementary level, but at the middle school level, it's all one-on-one. So I guess that would be my other question.
I should state that I didn't get a chance to speak with Jill Palmer, who's at the Durham Community School. So this and Ben felt it did reflect that, but there might be some nuanced little differences. So I just want to be transparent that there might be some slight differences. I'm not sure at the Durham Community School. I don't think there are. They didn't feel that there were, but I wanted to check with all of them. I just didn't have the time to do it today. I couldn't. Well, I reached out, but they were teaching, which is good.
Okay. Thank you for the degree to which this is quite comprehensive. I really appreciate that. I have a couple questions, however, and some of those I'll echo that have been raised by Maddie and Beth, and just throwing out that there are some really cool ways to do either ensemble or even small group, 2 or 3 people in lessons or together through technology. And it's not the same as being in person, but it is kind of a fun twist, and it can help with the anxiety of going alone. But a question I have is, I'm wondering whether you can expand upon what it means in chorus, for instance, in the yellow in elementary, when it says in-person instruction but no singing. Am I reading that correct? Sure. Or is it no singing? Yeah, what is, when it's chorus in person without singing, is that saying that we're focusing on theory and sort of rhythm, or what is?
So I'm going to take a stab at this, but again, I don't have all the answers, so I can take a stab at it, but I know that, and I'm not sure if this is in the general music or the chorus or both, but I know they're teaching songs, and there's certain parts of singing, and I'm not a music person, so disclaimer, right? There's certain parts of singing that you can do at the lower level that aren't considered the singing parts that they can do, and they can teach the song in the words and the meaning of the song and all those other components, but I'd rather get a better answer for you.
Okay, yeah, and that was also in the grade 6 through 8 with the band and chorus.
So I will say that I observed a music lesson yesterday on my walkthroughs, and it was at Mass Landing, and they were using drumsticks, and they were definitely doing rhythms where they were saying the rhythm and not singing the rhythm. Mm-hmm. So obviously you're not going to do music theory at the elementary level, but I think there will be a lot of like drumming and that kind of.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's still music theory to some, learning about rhythm and.
Well, right,
all of
right,
that,
but not in a dry.
Right.
There was nothing dry about the
That's
lesson
just,
yesterday. I guess that's my point. I mean, I
could
kind
do
of wanted a
theory
pair
at
of
elementary.
sticks.
You could do solfege.
Yeah, but I think one of my concerns is that if it is theory-based, noting at middle school, it's talking also about band without instruments as well as choir, that theory can draw a very different crowd than the singing performance side. And so just, that if it is more the mathematical theory, that's not necessarily quenching the art side of what students are going for. But I appreciate that there are things like the rhythm, and I mean that's in any time you're doing that as well. So thank you.
So has there been any discussion about bringing the music in regular instruction outdoors and doing a little bit of the traditional singing or humming, or, I mean, the
At the middle
classes
school?
now are really small, and usually during class time there are no kids out in recess or fewer. So I would encourage the teachers to explore doing at least some ensemble singing outdoors when weather permits, given that the classes are small for now. When we go to green, if hopefully we go to green, then that may have to be re-examined. But
Right,
I
and-
think
and-
at the moment it is possible, because I've been talking to parents and students, and the classes are quite small.
Right.
Um,
And so the high school, they're trying to do that on the bleachers out here, and they've marked them off, and so got the permission and all of that, and would, if we need the mask, then we'll get the mask, and that should be. I talked to Erin a little bit about that, and I think there was, there's a lot of outdoor classes there, so there's math being taught outside. Every class at the middle school is like outside, so it's finding that space so that you're in the time, so that it's not near, or you know. So I think that they're talking about it and they're trying to figure it out, and probably the next 2 weeks they'll tell a better story on how they've worked through that.
Yeah.
But
And at the elementary especially, because, I mean, that's what really draws the kids.
Right.
It's just the singing together, really. I mean, that's what it's all about. And on that point, too, when they were doing in the spring chorus, there was virtual synchronous lessons. Do you know how many kids actually stayed with it? Because just the group friend for our child who was in 4th grade last year, it was really disappointing for them that they had to mute themselves and sing along at home so they wouldn't create this cacophony of a chorus, which I totally understand, but at the same time it was so disappointing for the kids that they lost interest. By the end, no one was participating, and it was quite sad because they were making the effort, but it wasn't working. So there must be another way
was this
to do it.
chorus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was the general music singing or chorus.
It was
Actually.
chorus.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm sure it would apply to general singing too. That's why I'm encouraging, okay, outdoors, little groups, ensembles, even bring a few instruments. I mean, there are ways that we can do something a little more warm and exciting than just sing along at home and mute yourself, or just go with percussion, which is great for those who want percussion, but there's more to it. Yeah, that can be done, I think.
Just from sort of a organizational, big picture perspective, you know, for sports, they've got the MPA, which, you know, is a body meant for organization of sports, and even in the school we have an athletic director or athletic directors to help manage that. For the arts and chorus and band, Cynthia, are you going to be the point person for that going forward, or are we going to designate somebody to be that director for this very special time? And if it's not you, you know, do any of the other staff members, because I know you've got a little bit going on with a million other things, so you know, is there a person available, willing, capable, blah blah blah, to take that arts director role during this extremely different time where we need all these details worked out? So Maddie's going to be it? Okay. So
Becky's probably remembering, I've been asking for something, that exact position. It wouldn't be exactly comparable to what Craig's job is because of the scheduling of all the sports and everything, because that's crazy. But I think it would be really amazing for our district to have a stipended arts director position for the district for situations like this, and just to align our faculty a little bit more and help us build programs with a better through line and to present in situations like this.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because I do see so many parallels. I mean, you watch the really loud sports parents and like how critical it is to those kids, and that's why they want to come to school. And it's it mirrors the arts and in so many ways. And, you know, my exact thought was Jeremy's like, okay, so we have the MPA that's advocating, right, on behalf of the athletics and the sports. You know, and he said he didn't necessarily understand why the people at the bottom of the hierarchy were the ones. Well, I think it's to force the people above to make a decision, right? So, you know, I think the really sad thing is there isn't a comparable arts organization statewide that's advocating. Well, if they are, then
they're right here. They're the Maine Music Educators Association, and Ben Potvin was their previous president.
Okay,
but still, they're advocating on behalf of teachers, and so that doesn't necessarily engage the parent voice.
Yeah, and I mean, but that's good. I'm glad that there's an organization that's doing this on behalf of that, because I feel like that's where it has to come from, right? I don't think we as a board would be sitting here saying, you know, we can make the rules for soccer and football and field hockey and feel comfortable doing that. We delegate that to the MPA and the DOE and the CDC because they have the data and the scientific information behind making those decisions. I don't think we would be the ones to make that decision as a board. And, you know, I would love to see that same sort of guidance coming from this group working with the state to say, yeah, we recognize that these arts are critical to these kids and the social emotional well-being of our kids. And we want to, how can we make it happen? Because that's what they're doing with sports, right? How can we make it happen? If that part's not safe, we're going to take that part out of the game for this year. Okay, what can we do for the arts for the same thing? Because I do, you know, it's sad when you look and think, you know, that they have to mute themselves and sing along. But having listened to trumpet practice with 5 of them, I wish they all muted themselves. Well, you're on a conference call in the other room. What is that noise? So, you know, I'm sure that it's evolving, and they'll continue to you know, try and come up with safe ways that we can get the arts back into these kids' lives in, you know, the most appropriate way. You know, I think the other issue is that, you know, the sports one takes the front seat because it's so many different seasons, right? The sport is only a small, I mean, you know, football is what, 8 games? I mean, it's a very small season. So if you miss the window, you're done for the year. So rightly or wrongly, I think that's why that one probably took a front seat, maybe in addition to the loud parents. So I really hope that, I mean, I'm glad that there's figuring out a way, you know, they recognize the importance. They're trying to get it into the classroom. And I would love for, you know, for us to get some guidance from the DOE and the CDC on, you know, can we do it outside then? Can we do it in small groups? Like, what can we do? You know, we recognize we can't have huge orchestras this year, but there's got to be something. So, yeah.
There is software that allows people to perform together. You know, we've been seeing it at home. You know, orchestras are doing it. My daughter participated in a virtual music camp, and there was a performance that happened that way, and some choruses are doing it. I don't know how expensive it is. I don't know if it's available to schools, but I'd love to see us look into that possibility. Looks like Susanna might know.
Yeah, so I'm part of a choir where we're doing that. And we have been using since March software that enables all sorts of things, from people singing and practicing together and you can hear each other, and you can do it with headphones so that you can hear it and everybody else in your house or area does not need to hear it if they don't want to. Or you can do it where everybody contributes an individual thing and then you can piece it together and the software can do that for you. And that software that we've been using is a trial version. And it's a trial, we have unlimited access. It's just a trial in the sense that it doesn't let us do certain features, but we haven't needed to do it. And we can do anything from a performance where you hear all the voices to the sort of Zoom choirs where you see everybody in their own little box doing things synchronously. So there are lots of, that software exists. And I think for us to be part of to use the free software and get everything we want from it, we did need to make sure that everybody had hookup capacity, but if we are giving technology to every student, that should be something that we can probably accommodate or at least make provisions. So just that technology is there, and it can be free. So I think it's something that we could investigate.
There and free are both good things. Yes, Beth.
I'd just like to second a couple things on Maddie. I know she's mentioned it before and I hadn't spoken up, but I would also highly support a stipended position in order to sort of relieve Cynthia of all this and to advocate and to get things together in a way that takes some of the burden off of our teachers, because I feel like right now it's really on the teachers and Cynthia, but to come up with that without sort of a leadership position. And the other thing I think Valley was asking, I just want to make sure that we got the data maybe from all the schools about where, how much maybe kids have left, because I know the middle school sent out a survey asking, who was still interested in band and chorus based on these, guidelines. So I would also be very curious to have that information across the schools.
Just for clarification of who's still doing it, who came back?
Yeah, or like how many, based on what previous numbers were, how many maybe have lost,
Okay.
Like where we are with that based on the accommodations that we have to do, so.
Okay. Thank you, Cynthia.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that's the end of our new business section. Personnel, we didn't have anything. Public comment, I will just pause to see if we have anyone via Zoom. Okay, there's nobody on the Zoom. And I think okay, so I think we're good on public comment. So I would take a motion for consideration and approval to enter into executive session as outlined in 1 MRSA section 4056A for the purpose of discussing the superintendent's evaluation. Susanna and Beth, thank you. All those in favor? Great. So we'll just pause for a second to turn off the cameras and then we'll get started.